Part 42. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 411. In the year 1508 of the Hiwan calendar, half a year has passed since the war that established the pattern of the four emperors in the New World. A lot of things have happened in the past 6 months. The news of Whitebeard Edward Newgate's devil fruit energy awakening spread throughout the sea. After entering the New World, most pirates from all over the world chose to take refuge under Whitebeard's flag. For a time, the power of the Whitebeard pirates increased greatly. The dark night of this world belongs to Hosgarot Orgrim. This sentence was spread with the news of the world and everyone knew it. Nowadays, everyone knows that he is the only one in the world who can confront the Whitebeard pirates head-on without falling behind. The only one who belongs to the Warhammer pirates is the Lord of the Night, Khazgarot Orgrim, who is also one of the four emperors. As for the Beasts pirates, they may be able to compete with the Whitebeard pirates, but they can't do it without losing. It feels a little bit worse. As for the Big Mom pirates, in the past 6 months, not only has their strength not increased, but they have also been in a state of utter confusion and have lost all kinds of benefits, let alone mentioning it. Even in the New World, there are already silver medal players who have challenged the Big Mom pirates. Fortunately, Charlotte Lingling was able to cover up the situation. Except for the four emperors, anyone who dared to challenge her was ruthlessly wiped out. Precisely because of Charlotte Lingling's bloody methods, her shaky position as the four emperors was still tied up and did not fall. Generally speaking, in the New World, the structure of the four emperors is stable, and there is almost no room for development of other forces. New pirates who enter the New World have only 2 paths to take. The first way is to choose to join the Yonko pirates and become a member of the Yonko structure. The second path is like a bereaved dog, wandering around the New World, looking for opportunities, dormant in the shadows, waiting for the opportunity when the world pattern changes, and seeking to reach the top. Of course, there is also a third option, which is to challenge the four emperors. Not to mention, there are countless pirates who have made this choice. Every day, there are people on the sea clamoring to step on Whitebeard, punch Orgrim, and ride Kaido to fuck Charlotte Lingling. But these people just made a noise. Most of the pirates who challenge the Yonko pirates cannot even meet Newgate, Orgrim, and others. He was immediately hung up and beaten by the officers of the Yonko pirates who were wandering around the New World. They beat you until you cried and called your mother and father. This is not the main theme of the New World. The current main theme of the New World is still the conflict between the Yonko pirates. The Beasts Pirates Legion of animal-type ability users are suppressing the various units of the Big Mom pirates in the New World. The Avalon First Legion of the Warhammer pirates, in cooperation with various independent pirate groups and the cotters of the group, is also strongly suppressing the living space of the Big Mom pirates. Fortunately, the Big Mom pirates are not truly alone. Although the two sides did not conclude any alliance treaty. But the independent captains and captains of the Whitebeard pirates will also lead their subordinates to fight with the Beast pirates and Warhammer pirates in the New World, maintaining a certain tacit understanding with the Big Mom pirates. All in all, the New World is in chaos now, but amid the chaos, it maintains a sufficiently stable situation. The four emperors are constantly testing each other and looking for opportunities. This is not the stage for Newgate and Orgrim. This is the stage where the leaders of each pirate group take the stage. For example, Sphinx, in the past 6 months, fought against the ministers and officials of the Big Mom pirates, and against the captains of the Whitebeard pirates. He almost never lost, and the most he had was a tie with Jose, the Diamond King, which was the only result that was not a victory. And the power of the Sphinx also raised its own banner in the New World. Known as the Human Weapon Rampage Lolita Sphinx. Good guy, anyone who has fought against her knows that if you don't have strong naval combat capabilities like Newgate and Orgrim, it's best not to fight against the fleet led by the Sphinx. You look like you're fighting a fleet. In fact, Once that bastard Lolita of the Sphinx gets going and uses all her firepower, she can form an army in a matter of minutes and destroy your fleet. And in the past 6 months, Enelu, who only started to join the fight in the later stage, showed off his thunderous fruit to the point where it flew up. Originally, when the Butter Island War broke out, Enel's performance was not particularly outstanding. The Navy didn't know what was going on, but when a wave of bounty orders broke out from the Warhammer pirates, even Aaron, the first warrior, was offered a bounty. Enelu is in neutral gear. It was not until the second half of the year that Enel returned to the sea again. As soon as he appeared on the stage, he pinned Charlotte Owen to the ground and hammered him. If Katakuri hadn't provided support quickly enough, one of the 3 brothers from the same mother would have died. That's right, the news that Charlotte Deifuku was killed by the Warhammer pirates and sent her head to Cake Island has already spread wildly in the New World. But what is very strange is that the Big Mom pirates actually endured this and acted as if nothing happened. But people familiar with it can still feel that Katakuri, the perfect man of the Charlotte family, has unquenchable anger in his heart. In short, Enelu can now be regarded as a rookie figure in the New World. The bounty is neither high nor low, with a bounty of 320 million belly. These are all the problems of chaos and war, large and small, in the New World. As for other aspects of things, a lot has happened in the past 6 months. In terms of business, the Avalon Dark Chamber of Commerce in the Eternal Night Sea, led by the Warhammer pirates, with capital injections from the Beast Pirates and the Don Quixote family, and the Big and Small Four headed by the Sea King Omid 172 Dark World merchants jointly formed a super large business group. The wealth and strength of this business group made everyone raise their eyebrows. They are involved in almost all walks of life in the Dark World business. Originally, they were fighting alone. At most, for the sake of their colleagues in the Avalon Dark Chamber of Commerce, if they encountered any difficulties, it would be great to give them a little help. But now, these 472 merchants, large and small, are completely tied up with the interests of the Warhammer pirates, the Don Quixote family, and even the Beast's pirates. They formed an interest group organization. According to the capital and strength, the shares are divided according to the corresponding detailed rules. After the group is formed, the wealth is redistributed. Every 3 months is a quarter, and every 4 quarters is a year, and wealth dividends are distributed. The scariest thing about this kind of dividend is that it is not distributed according to the industry you are responsible for, but is distributed equally among shares according to all the wealth gains of the entire group. This is very exaggerated. 2 quarters have passed so far. The Warhammer pirates, the Beast pirates, the Don Quixote family, and Omid are almost losing money, and they have to pay out all their losses. And those 472 businessmen were quickly brought up by this wealth distribution. Their net worths have skyrocketed, and all of them are wealthy. Because this kind of distribution is almost equalizing the funds invested by the Warhammer pirates, the Don Quixote family, the Beast pirates, Omid and other big guys. For example, the Warhammer pirates could originally sell 10 billion in net income from selling their arms, but if they were distributed according to shares, only a certain percentage of the income would eventually go to Orgrim, and the rest would be divided to other shareholders. Do you think it can be done without losing blood? Although in the past 2 quarters, the 4 big bosses almost cried out due to losses. But currently, this behemoth named Avalon Dark Group has begun to undergo drastic changes. The powerful redistribution of wealth instantly enriched the wealth of more than 400 businessmen, large and small. At the same time, I felt a strong sense of belonging and full of confidence in this Avalon Dark Group. They invested most of the allocated wealth into this dark group again. Then, with the help of collective connections and a large amount of capital injection, all walks of life, which were just small businesses, were upgraded to several levels in an instant. There are smart people who can already see that, although the Warhammer pirates and the Don Quixote family, 4 other companies, have lost so much money at the beginning that they have to sell out their pants. However, the growth rate of this group has rapidly expanded due to this loss. In 3 to 5 years at most, this Avalon Dark Group will become the most powerful overlord covering the entire dark world. In front of it, the Lone Shark King and the Human Organ Trader are all younger brothers. At that time, the dark group that is now a gold-swallowing behemoth will transform into a wealth-making machine, extracting a steady stream of Baileys from the dark world and feeding them back. The 4 companies that suffer the most losses now will be the 4 companies that make the most profits in the future. Among them, the Warhammer Pirates have the most advantage. Because the entire Avalon Dark Group, even if it has the participation of the Beast's Pirates, is still centered on the Warhammer Pirates. They are a behemoth rooted in the dark system of Avalon. In terms of shares, the Warhammer Pirates hold 33% of the group's shares, while the Beast Pirates only hold 7%. The Don Quixote family holds 13% of the shares, while Umit only holds 6% of the shares. As we all know, the Don Quixote family and the Warhammer Pirates wear the same pants. Orgrim and Doflamingo are so close that they are almost sworn brothers. Together, the shares they hold account for 46% of the total shares of Avalon Dark Group, making them the 2 largest shareholders. And the Beast Pirates can't do anything here at all. What a role, almost brought in by Orgrim to make money. This is because Kaido sold all his daughters to Orgrim as his daughter-in-law. On the surface, it seems that the Warhammer Pirates nominally control the power of the entire Avalon Dark Group, but in fact, even if they include the Don Quixote family, they still seem to be a little short of absolute control. The point. But many people don't know that Umit, the shipping king, has already invested all his wealth in the Avalon system. He is already a member of the Warhammer Pirates. It belongs to the existence of dark lines. Once there is any careerist in the Avalon Dark Group who wants to cause trouble. As soon as Umit came out, Orgrim didn't need to use any crude pirate methods. Pure business holdings exceeded 50% of the entire group's strength, reaching a holding ratio of 52%. You can use commercial means to kill those white-eyed wolves. But this is just a preparation. Judging from the current situation, it is estimated that no one will dare to compete with the Warhammer Pirates within 10 or 20 years. These people are following Orgrim to become popular and prosperous, and they really have no objection at all. It's a good thing that Orgrim doesn't let them continue to inject capital, so as not to dilute their shares, otherwise they would like to sell the iron and buy Avalon shares. Every household among these merchants wanted to pray to Orgrim before eating. It was so exaggerated. It's not that Orgrim has much charisma, or that Orgrim has any kindness towards them. There is indeed a favor, but the most important thing is that Orgrim can make a lot of money with them. As long as they can make money, Orgrim is their grandfather. What's more, this big boss still controls the world's top power. Who is mentally ill and dislikes his longevity and would have trouble with him? Except for the formation of the Dark Syndicate of Avalon. The Avalon Dark Chamber of Commerce still has about 2.5 trillion belly in cash, which has not been touched yet. Although this is not a signal of war, the fact that the Warhammer Pirates hold such a huge amount of money in their hands makes all the forces feel terrified. After all, many things don't require war to solve. As long as there is enough money, people can still be killed. And Orgrim is now a representative of the rich and powerful. But in fact, these are all illusions, created by Orgrim, Don Quixote, Kaido, and Umit in conjunction with the Dark Group and the Dark Chamber of Commerce. In fact, of the 2.5 trillion belly, not a penny is left. That's right, in the past 6 months, Doflamingo has bought a huge amount of platinum and lead minerals. In the North Sea, Umit's shipping fleet is continuously transporting all this platinum and lead to Avalon Island for secret storage. Got up. Every member of the Dark Chamber of Commerce is involved in this business, so naturally they won't say anything nonsense. At the same time, all the people involved in this business are now gone, and they have all lost their families to the Avalon Dark Group. Therefore, this is also the first attack of the Avalon Dark Group. When Provence lies down and the results come out, everyone may be shocked. Now, the Avalon Dark Chamber of Commerce still exists, and Doflamingo is still the president. The relationship between this Chamber of Commerce and the Dark Group has become quite delicate. If we use an army as a metaphor, the Dark Chamber of Commerce is the reserve force and the new barracks. Anyone who comes to Avalon to do business can join. Afterwards, the Avalon Dark Group will select the best among them and choose to absorb these high-quality businessmen to join this huge chaebol system. To put it simply, it is the relationship between father and son. Talent reserve base. Only those who have truly joined the Avalon Dark Group are qualified to claim to be members of the Avalon family when walking outside. Changes in economic and business events, within half a year, seem to be the changes in Avalon that are worth noting. As for the changes in the world's camp structure, the most noteworthy thing is the official invitation of Don Quixote Doflamingo to join the King's Shichibukai organization. When this story came out, many people thought that the news of the world was crazy. Was it using this kind of fake news to deceive sales? A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 412. Who is Doflamingo? The boss in the dark world? The great pirate with a bounty of 547 million baileys? No, these are just his superficial identities. Almost everyone in the world who knows a little bit about him knows that Doflamingo was just a small businessman in the dark world who lived in the North Sea. When he really started to make a fortune, it was when the great pirate age wave started. He chose to join Orgrim. The two had a friendship as early as the North Sea, and Orgrim never treated Doflamingo badly. Doflamingo's current status and strength must be attributed to the Warhammer pirates. Judging from the relationship between the two parties, Doflamingo is simply Orgrim's biological brother and Orgrim's right-hand man in the dark world. And how important is the dark world to Orgrim? Just look at Avalon, it's completely one of Orgrim's basics. Such a person, such Doflamingo, walking on the sea, represents the Warhammer pirates and the king of the night, Gargoris Orgrim. And who is Orgrim? The pirate emperor of the New World, one of the most powerful men in the world, and an important enemy of the world government. Doflamingo, who represented him, became King Shichibukai. Is this really possible? Isn't this a joke? Can the Navy invite him? What are you talking about at the News of the World? When this newspaper first came out, countless people had this idea in mind. But in the end, the silence of the world government and the silence of the Navy are all confirming this fact. The great pirate Don Quixote Doflamingo, with a bounty of 547 million belly, has become the king of the Shichibukai. The far-reaching impact of this incident has not been reflected yet. But everyone knows that the Shichibukai under the king, who was just a salty mess at first, seems to have begun to change. The pirate emperor Hosgarot Orgrim and the world government have maintained a hostile relationship for 12 years starting from the year 1496 of the ocean calendar. There have been some changes. If there is no change, can Doflamingo join the king's Shichibukai? Even if the world government invites you, without the big boss of Orgrim's nod, do you think Doflamingo will ignore your world government? From this incident, we can see an attitude. It seems that the world government and Orgrim are deliberately easing the hostile relationship between the two parties. What does this mean? This means that perhaps in the next 5 to 10 years, or even longer, there may not be a particularly fierce conflict between the Navy headquarters under the world government and the Warhammer pirates. The Warhammer pirates have temporarily solved an external threat and are now free to engage in civil war. Moreover, there is a possibility that the two of them will work together in the future, with Doflamingo as the bond. Although I think it's a bit weird, the facts are already in front of us, and it's useless to say more. Fortunately, the two sides can only soften their attitudes now, and it is impossible for them to truly come together, even in the future. This is a blessing among misfortunes for the other major forces. From the current point of view, Doflamingo seems to have not changed much after he was appointed king of the Shichibukai. He still maintains his all-round skills and has unclear connections with all walks of life. Even after putting on the coat of King Shichibukai, he carried two big flags on his body. On the pirate side, he had Orgrim to support him. Officially, the world government endorses him. His business is getting better and better. Even Orgrim and the Avalon Dark Group benefited from it. Recently, there have been some rumors. I heard that Doflamingo is planning to set up an investment bank in the New World with the support of the Warhammer pirates. I don't know if it is true or not. After all, setting up a bank is not a simple matter. You need to have a huge amount of funds in your hands. Otherwise, it's a small fight and it's not interesting. And Doflamingo and Orgrim are not small figures. They are working in the bank, so they shouldn't be doing it in a small way. Could it be that the huge amount of 2,500 billion belly that Avalon held in his hands was used to do this? If that's true, then, maybe I can do some sniping. Even though 2,500 billion belly seems very huge, it is still not enough if it is used to build a financial system in the New World. Some professionals have roughly estimated that if it reaches a standard level, it will cost at least 5 trillion baileys. If you want to minimize the risk, it will cost at least 10 trillion baileys. Can Avalon have 10 trillion belly in cash? How can this be? Even if Orgrim sells the entire Avalon, he can almost scrape together this amount of money, but can he sell it? Or do you really think he is a behemoth like the world government? Therefore, the financial tycoons are ready to attack Doflamingo's bank plan. Although this will definitely offend the Orgrim boss, this is a normal business operation after all, so he shouldn't be retaliated too much, right? This was a fluke. If Orgrim really lost 2.5 trillion belly, it would be strange if he didn't catch all those who dared to cause trouble with him and kill them one by one. He is a pirate, the most evil and crazy pirate in history. Even if we look at his business attributes, they are also the business attributes of the dark world. Can we look at him from a normal business perspective? But the problem is, money moves people's hearts, and the temptation of capital is so terrifying. Even though they knew there was a risk of being beheaded, some tycoons were still willing to take the risk of offending Orgrim to find a way to raise money to snipe the 2.5 trillion belly funds. However, this turbulent atmosphere did not affect Orgrim's life. Who said I don't have 10 trillion belly? When Free Fans falls down, I will take out my big baby and throw it in your face in no time. Let you know what it means to be full of fear. Not to mention these things, currently, the World Conference is coming, and the senior generals of the Navy headquarters have gone to various participating countries, taking fleets with them to escort them to Marijoa. However, according to estimates, the first royal family to arrive at Marijoa will have to wait 2 months. But it was not too late, because Marijoa's World Conference was held in the middle of the year, so there was plenty of time. On the Shampoo Islands, Rayleigh was waiting for the arrival of a guest. He did not go to work today, but he was still dressed slovenly, wearing a coat. His long, pale blonde hair was already a little gray, making him look even more aged. There seemed to be a few more wrinkles on his face, but as a mature old man who has experienced great storms, he has an extraordinary charm. The older he gets, the more interesting he is. He can attract countless rich women to come to him. Spend gold coins. Just as Riley was leaning on the sofa in Siachi's tavern, drinking wine and humming a song, the tavern door was pushed open. Then, a red-skinned man with a tired look on his face walked in. He was a strong man from the Fishmen tribe. With just one glance, Shaky recognized him. This was exactly the helper Orgrim recommended to Rayleigh, the great hero Fisher Tiger who had launched several slave liberation movements around the world. However, because he was engaged in the slave liberation movement, he hardly received much attention. Because the world government does not acknowledge the existence of the slave trade at all, it naturally will not pay attention to these things. Therefore, Tiger's popularity is not very high. He is only famous among slave merchants or slave-catching teams. Riley also saw Tiger, stood up happily, and said, "Mr. Fisher Tiger? Welcome, come in and sit down." Tiger smiled and nodded at Riley. Facing this famous man Pluto, he didn't feel any guilty conscience. The only thing that feels a little strange is that Rayleigh, the right arm of the Pirate King, actually lives in seclusion on the Chambord Islands so close to the Navy headquarters Marineford. It is really strange. Secondly, it's this guy. If it weren't for that face, which was often in the newspapers back then, Tiger wouldn't have believed that this sloppy old man could be Pluto. "Were you lucky along the way?" Riley asked with concern, and very considerately gave Tiger a glass of wine. Tiger didn't chirk anything, picked up the wine, took a sip, and then said, "I came from the East China Sea, because due to the issue of identity, there are indeed many people chasing me, so it has been delayed for nearly half a year." After a slight pause, Tiger said with some embarrassment also, "I have always felt that there is a force following me, but I don't know who it is, and I'm not sure whether I got rid of them or not. Otherwise, we change the place. So as not to lead people here and disturb your seclusion, Pluto." Riley smiled and said, "Don't mind this, old man, although I live here in seclusion and don't want to cause trouble, but if anyone really wants to come to me for trouble, I'm not someone to be bullied. You were specially invited by me. The guests and helpers came to the Chambord Islands and encountered trouble. How could I have the nerve to stand by and watch?" When Tiger saw Riley saying this, he stopped worrying about anything. "Well, Mr. Riley, please tell me about this matter in detail. After all, the risk is very high, and I need to think about it carefully." Tiger spoke softly. Riley nodded and said without fussing, "Okay, then I'll tell you. Speaking of which, this matter is related to Amazon Lily of the Windless Belt, their crown prince." Riley and Tiger quickly got to the point. At the same time, at the port of the lawless zone of the Shampoo Islands, a mysterious figure wearing a cloak and a hood hiding his face also walked from a ship to the port. "Champagne Isles. It's been a long time since I've been here," the figure murmured a little. "If you follow the light and shadow and look over, you can vaguely see his face. It turns out to be Monkey, the leader of the Revolutionary Army de Darag." Tiger felt that there was a force following him at sea, but it was not an illusion. "But it's not the people who want to harm him, but Darag's Revolutionary Army. The last information they got was that Tiger disappeared near the sea area. At first, they thought that Tiger had returned to his hometown of Fishman Island, and Darag even went to Fishman Island to look for it himself. Nothing gained in the end. Therefore, excluding the Fishman Island, there are only 3 areas left in the sea area. One of the areas is Marine Headquarters Marineford. This is simply impossible. What is Tiger doing there? Although the Navy didn't care about his affairs at all and didn't offer any reward. Even secretly, the Navy generals who knew these things admired Tiger very much. But there is no doubt that Marineford cannot welcome such a person. The second one is Holy Land Marijoa, which is even more impossible. Darag directly ruled out that option. The third place is the Chambord Islands. If nothing else goes wrong, the talent he has been chasing for half a year, Fisher Tiger, should be on the Chambord Islands. The Revolutionary Army still has some strength here. The lawless zone is a mixed bag of good and bad, and almost all forces have eyes here. Even for the Warhammer pirates, Gangplank has arranged many intelligence personnel here. If Darag's Revolutionary Army didn't want to become blind, how could it not have made arrangements for this kind of gateway island that can enter and exit the New World? Soon, the members of the Revolutionary Army here welcomed Darag's arrival, and then they quickly exerted their power here. It didn't take long for them to find out the whereabouts of Fisher Tiger. Shakey's Rip-Off Tavern? What's the origin? Dalag asked a member of the Revolutionary Army next to him. It is the largest information sales place on the island. Because the proprietress there works as an intelligence agent, she is very strict about keeping secrets. We generally only know this information, the Revolutionary Army member said. Yeah? It seems that I have to go and see for myself. After thinking for a while, Darag nodded and said. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 413. On the surface, Siachi's Rip-Off Tavern doesn't look like a very special place, it's just a lonely tavern. When Darag came here, he was just a little strange about the sign of this tavern. Rip off a tavern? So blatant? Standing in front of the door and looking at the sign hanging on the door, it seemed that it was closed for business. However, this sign did not disappoint Darag. On the contrary, he was even more certain that Fisher Tiger was inside. He didn't care about the suspension of business. How can I, Darag, be the leader of the Revolutionary Army? Can I be persuaded by this brand? Non-existent. Is there anyone more awesome than me on the Chambord Islands? However, Darag remained polite to some extent. He was not looking for trouble, but came to Fisher Tiger for cooperation and even invited him to join the Revolutionary Army. Naturally, you can't put on an aggressive look. In terms of demeanor, Darag still has some. He reached out and knocked gently on the door of the tavern. Then, a slightly magnetic female voice came from inside, which sounded a bit sexy. Sorry to the customers outside, we don't have enough drinks today and we're closed. If you don't mind, please come back another day, Siachi said to the door outside the room. But when she finished her words, she heard the sound of the door handle being turned open. Then, the door was opened, and a hooded figure walked in. Siachi's brows knitted together in displeasure and said, This guest, I don't have much business for you today. Ha ha ha, please don't mind, I'm not here to drink, Darag smiled calmly. Then, he looked into the room, and then his originally calm expression suddenly froze. Damn it! Hades Shilbaz Rayleigh. Why is this guy here? It was promised that there is no one more awesome than me on this island. As a former vice admiral of the Navy who once followed his father Garp and chased the Roger pirates, Drago naturally, he recognized Rayleigh. When he was in the capital of Seven Waters, he not only saw Orgrim, but also Rayleigh. How could he not admit his mistake? At the same time, Rayleigh and Tiger also turned around looking towards Darag. Tiger frowned, seeming a little wary, and said softly, It seems that I really caused trouble for you, Mr. Riley. Rayleigh just felt that the aura of this hooded man looked familiar, but he couldn't see his face clearly, and felt a little strange in his heart. But as a strong man's intuition, Rayleigh could detect it in an instant. The mysterious guy in front of him seems to have a power in his body that can threaten him. Could it be the hound of the CP agency hiding his head and tail? Just when Darag was a little surprised by Rayleigh's existence, he was stunned. Suddenly, he felt when he arrived at the bar next to him, there was a murderous aura. It wasn't the bluffing feeling, it was the feeling of a master. Darag quickly came back to his senses and looked over there. At this time, Siachi's eyes were indeed filled with gloom. In the early years of the Rocks era, Siachi was a big pirate traveling in the New World, and that guy Garp also hunted her down. But later she gave up and started a tavern and intelligence service on the Chambord Islands. Business. But this does not mean that Siachi's strength has declined. To put it bluntly, Siachi has top-notch power. Whether it is a man or a woman, in this world, the strong will only be attracted by the strong. Could it be that Siachi was able to conquer Layli just because of her beauty? Maybe when Xiaoqi was young, she must have been a flower, but now, she has indeed faded a little, and her charm is not very great. I didn't notice it just now, but now, as soon as Xiaoqi released his murderous intent, Durag immediately felt that this woman looked familiar. Thinking about it again, isn't this the captain of the Black Rose Pirates, Xiaoqi, who was rampant in the New World? With just one Rayleigh, Durag is a bit out of his depth. I didn't expect there is another big boss hidden here. What is going on in the Shampoo Islands? Isn't the Navy headquarters Marineford right next to it? What are you doing? What about the Navy? I need support. I, Durag, am a former lieutenant general. I have so many thoughts in my heart that I want to yell, Mom, I'm selling the batch. But Durag knows very well that he has not been with the Navy for a long time. There is no need to fight and kill pirates, especially pirates who have retired. What's more, he feels that he can't beat him. Therefore, after regaining his composure, Drago quickly said, don't get me wrong. The moment he finished speaking, he also took off his hood, revealing his face. Monkey D. Durag, Xiaoqi recognized this man at a glance, and then the murderous aura on his body disappeared. As for Durag, although he is the son of the Navy hero Garp, he has already broken up with the Navy over the years. The world government is in trouble. He is now the thorn in the side of the world government and the leader of the Revolutionary Army. I have not heard how active he is in fighting pirates. He should not be looking for trouble. I thought it looked familiar. It turns out it's you, Garp's son, Rayleigh grinned and said with a smile. Durag felt a little relieved, just don't do anything. However, before he could speak, Laylee's face darkened and he said, but you are just like me, you are really rude. Didn't you see the closure sign on the door? You are not welcome here. If anything happens, come back when it opens for business. That's right, Rayleigh didn't like Durag at all. Although you, Durag, are currently against the world government, to put it bluntly, you are not with the pirates. And why should I look down on Garp's bastard son? Durag's face turned bitter. Chien, do you want to embarrass me like this? It seems that my reputation in the pirate camp is very bad. Back in Rogtown, that bastard Orgrim kicked me out without giving me a chance to speak. Why are you still like this when you get here? How can I say that I am also a big boss? Can't you give me some face? Although he felt aggrieved, Durag was not willing to fall out with Laylee and Xiaoqi here. He can't get over it. How rude, Pluto, and Mr. Tiger, this is indeed my fault, but please forgive my impulsiveness, because I have really been looking for Mr. Tiger for a long time. Half a year ago, our Revolutionary Army has been looking for Mr. Tiger's whereabouts from the East China Sea to this point, Durag explained. Tiger was also a little strange at this time. Unlike Rayleigh, Rayleigh was an old pirate, but Tiger was not. On the contrary, he still had a good impression of Durag. What the leader of the Revolutionary Army was doing, he admired them all. The two seemed to be innately compatible. And Durag's words can be regarded as clearing up Tiger's doubts. Why do I always feel something is wrong? I've been making trouble for a long time. It's your Revolutionary Army that is chasing me. Laylee frowned slightly, but then he did not drive away Durag directly. Instead, he looked at Tiger and asked, Mr. Tiger, what is your opinion? Tiger hesitated, and then said, Mr. Lee, if you don't mind, I do intend to chat with Mr. Durag. Riley's brows relaxed, and a smile appeared on his face again. It's okay, as long as this kid doesn't do anything here. If I cause trouble, I won't do anything to him. Riley invited Tiger here because he wanted something from him. Tiger was willing to get involved with Durag, but that was none of his business. There's no need to meddle in other people's business, but it's okay to show off to Tiger. Durag breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile on his face, Boss lady, can you do my business now? Please give me a glass of free flame. No problem, thank you for your patronage, 200,000 belly, Xiaoqi also said with a slightly evil smile on his face. Durag's face suddenly stiffened. 200,000 belly. He is not a luxurious person. Even if he was once the son of a hero, I live a very simple life. The flame of liberty is the most common spirit. In the tavern outside, a cup only costs 200 to 300 belly, and the price of a slightly better quality one is less than 1,000 belly. Just give it to me if you ask. My price of 200,000 belly? This, Durag smiled awkwardly. Is this where the name of the rip-off tavern came from? However, Durag could also afford to pick it up and put it down. He smiled bitterly and shook his head and said, forget it, I am relatively poor. Good steel is used on the blade. White water is free, right? Give me a drink, please. He said this. These words actually made Xiaoqi feel more favorable to him and look at him differently. This calm demeanor is worthy of the leader of the Revolutionary Army. It's easy to pretend to be rich, but in this case, being able to speak frankly about your poverty is really magnanimous, especially in front of Rayleigh and Tiger, who wants something from him. What's more, Xiaoqi didn't believe that the leader of the Revolutionary Army really couldn't afford a glass of wine. All we can say is that Durag is not leading by example all the time. It's really not unreasonable for the Revolutionary Army to reach this point. You are much more interesting than your old man, Garp, little monkey, Xiaoqi said with a smile. Little monkey? This eldest sister, are you a bit loud? But Durag had to admit that Xiaoqi really has this qualification, because she is the same generation as his father, Garp. Just when Durag didn't know how to answer the call, Xiaoqi took out a wine bottle from under the table and handed it directly to Durag. No need for a glass. This bottle of wine, the Flame of Freedom, will be given to you. Here you go, it matches your Revolutionary Army very well. Durag glanced at Xiaoqi in surprise, then with a smile on his lips, he took the bottle generously and said, thank you for the compliment, boss lady. The Flame of Freedom is indeed a good match for the Revolutionary Army. Carrying the wine bottle, Durag sat on the sofa with a smile. After the exaggeration and retraction just now, Rayleigh's impression of the boy Durag changed slightly, and he no longer caused any embarrassment to him. Instead, he asked directly, what are you looking for, Mr. Tiger? Durag did not hide anything and said directly, although I have never been in contact with him, what Mr. Tiger has been doing, I deeply admire you. Maybe it's a bit direct, but I still want to say that our Revolutionary Army needs talents and people with lofty ideals like Mr. Tiger. I am here to personally invite Mr. Tiger to join our Revolutionary Army. I think, this is also a beneficial thing for Mr. Tiger, right? Our Revolutionary Army is very supportive of Mr. Tiger's cause and is willing to fully support it. Tiger was really excited at this time. If he joins the Revolutionary Army, it seems really good. Judging from the failure of several slave liberation plans in the bridge-building country, Tiger also realized his own lack of ability. After all, many things cannot be changed by one person. But if you join the Revolutionary Army. But soon, the excitement in his heart calmed down again, which was both good and bad. I don't know if it's a rumor, but it seems, the Warhammer pirates seem to dislike the Revolutionary Army. Lord Chui is kind to himself, to Fishman Island, and to his compatriots. If this is the case, then Fisher Tiger is not willing to join the Revolutionary Army. He is willing to talk about ideals and life with Durag, but that does not mean that he is willing to join the Revolutionary Army. Not to mention, although Tiger is a guy with a great personality, he is a gangster after all and is the leader of Fishman Street. There is a feeling of loyalty in him. The things you do also have this impact. Sorry, I still need to think about this. Tiger shook his head and said. Durag sighed slightly. He heard that Tiger was declining, but he did not give up. Instead, he continued, even if Mr. Tiger is not willing to join our Revolutionary Army, In fact, I think the two of us can also carry out a lot of cooperation, which is not bad. Maybe in the future, if we get to know each other, there will be new opportunities. Cooperate, Tiger hesitated for a moment. If it's just cooperation, it should be nothing, right? After all, isn't Mr. Hammer also selling arms to the Revolutionary Army? At this moment, Rayleigh's eyes lit up and he laughed and said, Dora Tiger, then you are in luck. If you can help with something, maybe Mr. Tiger can see your sincerity. Oh, Durag raised his brows slightly, and then said softly, I would like to hear the details. Soon, Riley told Durag about the three Hancock sisters. Durag's expression also became very shocked. Damn it, I said you two guys have nothing to do with each other. Why do you get together? After a long time of quarrels, you are going to go to Marijo to cause trouble? Are you too courageous? That is Marijoya. Even our Revolutionary Army dares to go somewhere to cause trouble. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 414. Avalon, in Orgrim's courtyard. Doflamingo is sitting in the courtyard at this time, holding a wine glass in his hand, with a smile on his lips, and is talking to Orgrim. I really envy you, Master Chui. You clearly have identity, status, power, and wealth, but you seem so leisurely, Doflamingo said with some emotion. Gee ha 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 ha, isn't this because I have the help of you people around me? One person is trying to figure out the shortcomings and everyone is trying to figure out the strengths. Only by working together can we get the current results. Orgrim laughed and said. After chatting for a few more words, Doflamingo said, I'm leaving. Leaving again? In the past 6 months, you have been coming back and forth to my place, and you can't stay for more than a few days at a time. Are you so busy? Orgrim raised his eyebrows and asked. After this period of time passes, I may have a lot of leisure time, but, when Doflamingo said this, his expression seemed to be a little regretful. But what? Orgrim asked. Doflamingo smiled again, swept away his regrets and said, but after that, I may have to settle down. After taking care of Fravans in the North Sea. Settle down, you, young master, have time to settle down? Ha ha ha, well, it doesn't matter. It's not convenient for you to come. I can visit you when I have time. Orgrim said with a smile. Phew phew phew, that's no problem. I'll entertain you well and invite you to go fishing, Doflamingo said thoughtfully. Orgrim didn't think much, nodded and said okay, but what do you want to do? Of course I'm looking for a place to live, Doflamingo grinned and said very evilly. Doflamingo is a middleman in the dark world. After taking refuge with Orgrim, his business has grown bigger and bigger. Therefore, he is very busy and travels almost all over the world. And now that he said he was going to settle down, Orgrim already had some speculations in his mind. Dressrosa? That place you've been thinking about? Orgrim asked softly. Doflamingo didn't hide anything, nodded and said, that's right, Dressrosa. Gee ha 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 ha, you guys are really, obsession. What's good about Dressrosa? Destitute, if you like it, I can arrange a more prosperous place for you. Orgrim said with a smile. It is true that Dressrosa is very poor, but that is only because the Rica family is so bad. There is the ancestral land of my Don Quixote family. More than 800 years ago, my Don Quixote family lived there. Raise an army there and build a world government with the other 19 kings. Dressrosa was a powerful country in the world at that time, but since my Don Quixote family left, for more than 800 years, the Rica family has no idea what they are doing. It is simply disappointing. Disgraced my name as Dressrosa, it's time for Dressrosa to be returned to my Don Quixote family, Doflamingo said with a hint of disdain and defiance in his eyes. I have to say, Doflamingo is right. More than 800 years ago, Dressrosa was indeed a world power, both economically and military strength, and other aspects, they can all be ranked among the best in the world. Otherwise, a coalition of 20 kings would not be able to find Dressrosa. After all, the bosses formed a group to play the most difficult dungeon. It is impossible to bring a younger brother. Even if he did, this younger brother would not be qualified to become a celestial dragon in the future. But after the Don Quixote family moved to Mereggio, the Rica family came to power, and Dressrosa over the past 800 years, various levels have declined rapidly, especially in terms of economic strength. Now it is completely at the bottom of the world. What method did Doflamingo use to ruin the reputation of the Rica royal family? Yes, he threatened King Riku. Turn over the protection fee of 10 billion baileys, otherwise the Don Quixote family will attack Dressrosa. That's the question? 10 billion? Well, to use a more cruel metaphor, 20 beautiful ones, Miss Mermaid. To be honest, most countries and royal families in the world can afford this amount of money. Just look at how generous the nobles spent at the auction on the Chambord Islands. But the irony is that Ricadold III just couldn't get it. He was forced to borrow money from the citizens and used the reputation of the Rica royal family as a guarantee. Then he fell in love with Doflamingo. Since then, the reputation of the Rica royal family has plummeted, and the only advantage of the Rica royal family, word of mouth, has collapsed. Doflamingo took advantage of the situation and entered Dressrosa and became the king of Dressrosa. His name was justifiable, and even later, he became the king of Dressrosa. With the recognition of the world government, he became one of the kings of the participating countries under the world government as a pirate. If he is serious about it, as long as he is interested, he can even participate in the World Conference and publish on it his own opinions and remarks. To be able to do what he does as a pirate is, in some ways, the only one he can do. No matter how awesome Hokkaido is, what can you do? If you have the guts, you and I Doflamingo let us go to Mereggio for a meeting together openly. Can't we? Oh. I can do that. Some people may think that the Rica royal family can't even get out 10 billion belly. Doesn't this just show their integrity? This, in fact, it is a wrong idea. Yes, it is true that it is incorruptible, but behind it, it represents more incompetence. It means that during the 800 years of ruling Dressrosa, the Rica royal family has fallen to the point where the country has tens of billions of reserves. There is no gold left. This means that Dressrosa has almost no ability to withstand risks and is at the mercy of others. After Doflamingo came to power, Dressrosa's economic and military strength have been greatly improved. But there are also many shortcomings. His rule is very high pressure, and any business that opposes him will be killed. But precisely because Dressrosa's thoughts are extremely unified, the efficiency has also improved. It's to a very scary point. There are pros and cons. But after all, Doflamingo is a pirate, so we can't expect him to be a good person, right? Orgrim asked about Doflamingo's plan. Langminga didn't hide anything from him. According to his investigation, the Rica family in Dressrosa was very poor and he was ready to enter the scene on the grounds of blackmail. When Orgrim heard it, he found that it was no different from the original story, so he was no longer curious. You can do whatever you like. Just then, Queen Stussy walked out of the house. Her expression was a little lazy, as if she hadn't woken up. She was wearing a set of fluffy pink one-piece pajamas, covering herself in it, with a hood on, making her look like a cute little bear. In her hand, she held a chirping phone bug. It was Orgrim's phone bug. It seems that Queen Stussy was woken up by the phone bug while she was taking a nap. Fortunately, Stussy didn't feel angry about getting up. She yawned, rubbed her eyes, and walked towards Orgrim and Doflamingo mumbling. He didn't care whether it was inappropriate to wear the set of pajamas to meet others. Doflamingo was not an outsider anyway. What's more, in her pajamas, not to mention whether anything was exposed, only her face was exposed, okay. Just like a pink fur ball, it's full of girly flavor. I have to say that Queen Stussy's style is ever changing. When she becomes sexy, Orgrim can spurt blood. When she becomes cute, she looks like a young and beautiful girl. Dover, Stussy smiled sheepishly at Doflamingo and nodded. Doflamingo also smiled at her and said, "My queen, when will you bring Andre back? It seems like it's been just a few days, right? I heard that the research over there has reached the final stage and is about to give it to Lucci, injection of medicine." Stussy stretched out his hand and scratched his head. While saying this, he also handed the phone bug in his hand to Orgrim. Orgrim took it and looked at it, and murmured in surprise, "The Fishman Island. Neptune." The relationship between Orgrim, Neptune, and Murloc Island is very good. If Whitebeard's flag is hanging there, it brings a safe and stable environment to Murloc Island. Then Orgrim, the arrangement there is equivalent to opening up the channel between Fishman Island and the sea. Now, there are more and more mermaids, fishmen and other strong men and beauties from the deep sea in Avalon. Even on Fishman Island, Avalon has a vague reputation as a second home. Because it is really nice here. For Fishman Island, it is simply a paradise. Secondly, it is precisely because Avalon is one of the Fishman Islands on the sea. The window exists, and the resources of Fishman Island can be exported here, and the resources needed by Fishman Island on the sea can be continuously transferred back to Fishman Island. This has led to the economic development of Fishman Island being different from here. Over the years of cooperation with Orgrim, it has developed rapidly. Dragon Palace City, which was originally a wealthy place under the sea, is now so rich that it is probably ranked among the top in the world. I heard that Neptune likes to eat a kind of mountain from the Western Sea very much. Mutton. This kind of goat meat. If live sheep are transported to Fishman Island from various channels, each sheep will be worth at least 100,000 belly. And with Neptune's body shape, he really wants to eat this thing. He could eat millions of belly in one meal. Just for this, he would have to eat 30 to 50 million belly within a year just to eat this sheep. But he didn't feel bad at all. Even for the entire Dragon Palace City's finances, there is almost no pressure at all. The residents of Fishman Island do not feel that the Neptune royal family has any excessive extortion or extravagant behavior. On the contrary, Neptune is getting richer and richer. At the same time, Fishman Island is also getting richer and richer. In the eyes of the residents of Fishman Island, it is the enlightened King Neptune who opened the window to the outside world of Fishman Island and met with the leader of Fishman Island. The benefactor, Lord Orgrim, has cooperated to lead Fishman Island to the road of common prosperity. So what's wrong with us, the king of Fishman Island, eating some goats? It's not spending your money. In short, over the years, Fishman Island has I don't know how much money I made from Orgrim, and Orgrim also made a lot of money from Fishman Island. Avalon was able to be built so quickly, and 7 ports were started at the same time. There are various newly built large-scale urban areas in recent years. All they need is money. Murloc Island has contributed a lot to it. It can be said that both parties are in a state of win-win cooperation. In this situation where everyone can make money, Orgrim, can the relationship with Ryago Castle be bad? However, although the relationship is very good, since Neptune is a king under the world government after all, the two of them rarely have contact with each other on weekdays. But thinking about it, it doesn't seem to matter. Contactable. So Orgrim was very surprised at this time. Why did Neptune suddenly call himself a bug? Could it be that something happened to Fishman Island? Don't affect me, Avalon. Ah. Thinking of this, Orgrim didn't shy away from anything. They were all people he trusted, so he directly answered the phone. Brother Neptune, Orgrim called out in a very friendly tone. Ha 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 ha, Boss Orgrim, King Neptune also laughed and responded. Listening to his happy voice, Orgrim felt a little relieved. There should be nothing bad. Otherwise, why would this old guy be smiling so happily? Is he sick? Gee ha 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 ha, brother, you seem very happy to hear your voice. Did something happy happen? Orgrim asked with a smile on his face. Ha ha ha, that's right, Boss Orgrim, our Princess Otohim gave birth to a baby girl for me today. We are going to name her Shirahoshi. As an elder, Boss Orgrim, you are not allowed to express your gratitude to Shirahoshi. Nipton said with joy in his tone. From this sentence, it can also be seen that the relationship between the two parties is very close. Otherwise, Neptune would dare to ask Orgrim for a gift? Of course Orgrim didn't. Mind you, when his family Andrest was born, Fishman Island sent a boatload of treasures, which was full of sincerity. Now that the Neptune family's daughter was born, Orgrim really should say something at the same time. He also felt a little emotional in his heart. Neptune, the ancient weapon Poseidon, king of the sea, is born. Gee ha 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 ha, this is such a happy event. Don't worry, brother, I will arrange it for our lovely little Princess Bakesing. Orgrim laughed. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 415. Melview, First Institute of Biology. At this time, outside the door of a certain laboratory in this institute, next to the one-way transparent window, Yamato followed Robin, holding 3-year-old and dressed in his arms, and was observing inside with a curious face. Is there really no problem? Should we save Lucci? Yamato hugged and dressed, who looked confused, and asked Robin beside him. Robin, a little girl, was holding a piece of scientific research information in her hand and wearing a white coat. She looked like a budding scientist. She shook her head seriously, raised the information in her hand, and said, "Don't worry, Mr. Caesar and Mr. Indigo's theories are very mature. Judging from the data, the success rate of this operation is as high as 97%, after the end, there is a high probability that Lucci will awaken the power of fire or thunder, which will open the door to a new world for him and increase his strength and potential. If this surgery is really successful, it will be of great benefit to the Warhammer pirates, and even Rengars will undergo surgical transformation. Yamato is not as awesome as Robin. After coming here for more than half a year, he actually read and understood 1/3 of the scientific research materials here." Yamato was confused. After listening to Robin's words, he thought for a while and said, "Isn't that proof that there is still a 3% chance of failure? What happens if it fails? I see that Guy Lucci is not very willing to undergo this kind of surgery." Robin tilted his head in a sinister manner, pretending to be innocent, and said doubtfully, "How could he not be happy? Didn't he accept the appointment from Boss Orgrim to personally participate in this experiment? When he came, he was in high spirits. As for the 3% failure rate, if it really failed, Lucci would become a madman, but this possibility is almost impossible, because the 3% chance is based on theory, that is to say, if an individual follows the process, there will be a 97% success rate, and this time he presided over the operation. Yes, but Mr. Caesar, Mr. Indigo and Dr. Nightingale, with the 3 of them joining forces, I can't even see the factor of failure." "Is that so?" Yamato murmured something nonchalantly. At this moment, Andres seemed to have discovered something. He suddenly laughed and waved to the other side of the corridor happily. Yamato and Robin followed Andres, looking at it with special eyes. I saw Nightingale holding a cup of oolong tea in his hand, wearing a white coat, and holding a piece of surgical information under his arm, walking over with a smile. "That's right, Yamato, don't worry, Lucci is our Lord Hammer's treasure, we won't let him have any problems, don't worry," Nightingale said with a smile. At the same time, in this laboratory, Lucci was tied tightly to the operating table. At this time, he looked frightened and looked very pale. But feeling weak again. What are you going to do? I am the chief inspector of this research, appointed by Boss Orgrim. You actually drugged me, Lucci struggled feebly, with a look of panic in his eyes, and cursed on the operating table. Everything was going smoothly. He has been following up carefully in the more than half a year since he came to Melview. On this cross-era research topic. Although he didn't understand many things, he still participated in meetings with scientific research experts like Caesar, listened, and carefully observed every time. Experiment. Witnessed the madness of those modified animal-type devil fruit ability users at the beginning, then gradually became controllable, and until not long ago, they completely completed this research project. In more than half a year, Lucci, his knowledge has greatly increased, and he has realized the importance of scientific research. He feels that his behavior in the past 6 months and more is worthy of Master Chui's arrangement, right? I have indeed personally participated in the development of the experiment. Never missed a scene. As a result, after lunch today, I felt a little groggy and couldn't help but fall asleep on the sofa. However, when I woke up, I found myself tied to the operating table. On the ground, Caesar and Indigo were talking about some scientific research terminology. Before coming, Lucci would have known nothing about it, but after experiencing so much in the past 6 months, he could certainly understand what these two people were talking about. They want to transform themselves. Isn't that right? Is this what it means to be personally involved? Have you misunderstood Master Chui's order? Although as a participant in this series of processes, Lucci knows very well that today's surgery the research has been very mature, and there is almost no possibility of failure. But who knows how it feels to lie here? I am still panicking. Don't worry, Mr. Inspector, you will thank us after the operation. Don't worry about anything. You know the process very well. You should know that it will be quick and not painful at all, Indigo said to Lucci with a smile. Put me down. We are companions. Indigo. I came to Melview when I was 5 or 6 years old. You have watched me grow up. What are you doing? Lucci started to play the emotional card. Brother Indigo seemed to recall the scene when Mr. Hammer just brought Lucci back when he was still under Boss Shiji. At that time, Lucci was still a thin man. As for bean sprouts. Now, he is already a strong young man. Time flies so fast. But he did not change his mind, but said seriously, don't worry, Lucci, I will definitely not let anything happen to you. If you say this, I will become even more uneasy, Lucci roared in grief and anger. Doctor. I want to see Dr. Nightingale. I am a reserve cadre of the Warhammer Pirates. I have shed my blood for Lord Hammer, and I have been loyal to the group. Doctor. Save me, Lucci shouted at the top of his lungs. At this moment, the door of the laboratory was opened from the outside, and then Nightingale walked in carrying his favorite oolong tea. I saw Nightingale. He looked helplessly at Lucci, who was tied to the operating table, and said, I'm here, what are you shouting for? Your kid has been following Mr. Chui all day to eat and drink. When did you shed blood for Mr. Chui? When did you ever show your loyalty to the regiment? Isn't this what everyone in the story should shout like? Lucci complained at first, and then begged with hope, help me, doctor. Dr. Nightingale. I don't want to have surgery. Nightingale stepped forward, took out the surgical information under her arm, knocked on Lucci's head and said, don't worry, I am here, Norman Nightingale. Those who cannot die, are you ready to welcome the arrival of the new world and open the door to the road to becoming a strong person? Hello. Hey. Playing for real? You are not some soul-chasing soul from the underworld. Your name is the Desperate Doctor. Do you think I don't know? It was written clearly on the reward order a few days ago. Desperate, Lucci struggled and yelled. Don't get me wrong, that is the misunderstanding of me by the world government and the Navy headquarters. When Mr. Hammer was young, he was called the evil skull crusher, Nightingale complained. Just when Lucci was about to say something, Nightingale put the full cup of oolong tea in her hand on the miscellaneous table nearby. Although he loved this oolong tea very much, he was about to perform reconstructive surgery on Lucci at this time. Although the surgery was very simple and only required one injection. But it is not ruled out that there may be a stress reaction in the future. Of course, he cannot work after drinking tea. That would really be a joke on Lucci's life. This cup of tea was what he planned to drink to celebrate after the operation was completed perfectly. Stop talking nonsense and start gagging. Nightingale raised her hand and spoke like a big shot. Caesar on the side laughed. Although he is a big shot in scientific research, when it comes to clinical practice, Nightingale still has to be a medical doctor. The boss will make the decision. As soon as Nightingale finished speaking, Caesar picked up the black gag on the table. He looked at Lucci evilly and said, "Here, open your mouth and put this gag. Hold it in your mouth, lest you bite your tongue and kill yourself later. You are dreaming. Even if I, Lucci, die here today, fall to the ground from here, and get knocked to death, I will never eat this gag," Lucci cursed fiercely. But as soon as he finished speaking, Indigo stepped forward and grabbed Lucci's chin. With a little force in his hand, a clever force forced Lucci to open his mouth. And Caesar was obviously very skilled in cooperating with Indigo. He had done this kind of thing countless times. As soon as Lucci opened his mouth, Caesar grabbed his hand. Black and thick gag was inserted directly into Lucci's mouth. Woo woo woo, woo-hoo, Lucci struggled incomprehensibly, with tears in his eyes, and a faint feeling of despair. Nightingale slapped him on the head and said, "Be honest, the more you struggle, the more likely you will be. It may cause us to make mistakes. Don't worry, it's very quick. Just one injection and it's over. You can still have dinner with me tonight." Woo woo, woo 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 woo, Lucci whined a few more times angrily. Then he seemed to really accept his fate, closed his eyes, and slumped on the operating table without moving. "What did this kid say?" Brother Indigo smiled, prepared potions on the other side, and asked. "Can't understand," Caesar also responded while observing Lucci's vital signs on the nearby instrument. Nightingale smeared alcohol on Lucci's arm and said with a smile, "I guess it means that this matter is not over yet, waiting for the operation. After it's over, is he going to make us look good or something? Yo! Is this guy so upright? You dare to threaten us? What if my hand shakes?" Indigo said with an evil smile. Lucci, who had his eyes closed, suddenly opened them, as if he wanted to beg for mercy. At this moment, Indigo handed the potion prepared in his hand to Nightingale. Nightingale grinned and moved very quickly without any hesitation. He inserted a needle into Lucci's side. On arm. Woo, Lucci whimpered in horror. But at this moment, the expressions of Nightingale, Indigo, and Caesar were all very serious. Nightingale's arms were very stable, without any shaking or trembling. Slowly inject the tube of medicine into Lucci's arm. The operation is over. Yes, it's that simple. It's called surgery, but it's actually just an injection. But the medicine inside, but it was carefully prepared, and after the injection, the real battle began. If something unexpected happened to Lucci, the three of them would go all out to save Lucci at all costs. Of course, it is best not to let this happen. After one injection, Lucci awakens new abilities, and everyone goes to have dinner happily together. This is the best ending. Although Nightingale and others comforted Lucci, "It doesn't hurt, just give it an injection or something." But Lucci is not a fool. He has personally participated in several experiments, and of course he knows that it will be accompanied by severe pain. How can you get power without paying the price? When the medicine entered his body, the muscles in Lucci's arms surged, and then a fiery burning sensation rushed into his mind. The loss of control and madness of most ability users are caused by at this point, their heads will be burned. Caesar. Nightingale called out without hesitation. Caesar immediately turned on an instrument, and then began to release air conditioning on the operating table to quickly cool down Lucci. Then, Lucci's body began to change, with mottled leopard patterns appearing on his body, his fur grew and he entered a state of animal transformation. Indigo, Nightingale called again. Indigo was also very fast and pressed a button under the operating table. The operating table was instantly reinforced, and several restraint devices fixed Lucci tightly. On the operating table. Is it fire or thunder? Nightingale stared at Lucci with a look of anticipation in her eyes and murmured. After about 3 minutes, Lucci's violently twisting body gradually calmed down. Heavy breathing was rising and falling from his nasal cavity, and his eyes were a little unfocused, as if he had lost his mind. But Nightingale and others were not worried but happy, because if it was really a breakdown of reason, then Lucci should not look like this, but very irritable and crazy. There was a slight sound. Nightingale and others' pupils shrank, and a smile appeared on their faces, because an arc of electricity flashed across Lucci's ears. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 416. Dinner was held at Shiki's palace. Yamato was holding a kebab in his hand. He looked very unladylike while eating, and his face was all oily. Robin, on the other hand, was eating snacks very elegantly and seemed not to be very interested in meat. Shiji, who was sitting on the main seat, looked a little embarrassed, with food residues everywhere on his body. Because he was holding and dressed in his arms. After this little guy was weaned, he also ate ravenously, leaving a mess on the plate in front of Shishi. But it was obvious that Shiji didn't care about this at all, and even had a smile on his face, looking like he was doting on Andrest. Grandfather, eat. Andrest held a small cut piece of meat in his hand and put it in front of Shiki's mouth very sensibly. Shiji didn't dislike anything at all, he opened his mouth and ate the little piece of meat with a smile. Looks like a good couple. Not far away from the table, Lucci was cutting the steak in front of him with a knife and fork, his face full of reluctance, and he was mumbling something in his mouth. But from time to time, there would be a slight discharge of electricity in his hands, making a crackling sound. Opposite him, Nightingale, Indigo, and Caesar were eating, observing Lucci, and discussing Lucci's changes from time to time. It feels a bit like the fur tribe, but the fur tribe's electricity is not as strong, Nightingale said softly. Joke. If we can only turn into the useless state of the fur tribe, our transformation will be tantamount to failure, Caesar said with a smile. But it's not as powerful as Enel's thunder fruit, Indigo also said something. Nightingale rolled his eyes at Indigo and said, if we can catch up with the thunder fruit, then Enel's so-called strongest ability is too worthless. I feel like I can't go up or down. I might as well be able to breathe fire, Caesar smiled and teased. When Lucci, who was cutting steak, heard this, he glared at Caesar with dissatisfaction and said, you guys didn't do it? Can you blame me? Ha 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 ha, the new awakening of an animal-type ability user has a lot to do with your subconscious. Potions can only determine a certain range. Within this range, what kind of power will be awakened depends on your instinctive choice. Looking at it now, this means that subconsciously, you hope to get the power of thunder and lightning. Why? Is it because you have a good relationship with Enel? Nightingale asked with a smile. Lucci was very angry when he was on the operating table, but now that he has awakened his new power safely, he is very happy. There is no need to blame Nightingale 3 at all. It's just that people have a sense of shame, so they mutter and curse. After listening to Nightingale's inquiry, Lucci chewed the beef, thought for a while, and said there must be some reasons, right? I really like Brother Enel's abilities. In short, study hard and develop it. Although it is not as domineering as the thunder fruit, this kind of power is not bad. You need to gradually develop the potential in your blood. In the future, this will become an important help for you. Nightingale smiled and nodded. At this moment, Yamato, a little girl, wiped her hands with a tissue and asked expectantly, then we can leave Melview and return to Avalon, right? There's nothing interesting here at all. Avalon is more lively. Nightingale smiled and said the three of us will continue to do research in Melview and will not go back. However, the war is over, so you can go back to Avalon. Yes, maybe Rengar will come to Melview soon after you go back, Indigo said with a smile. Robin turned to look at Shiji and asked Admiral, how should we arrange it? Shiji smiled, glanced down at Andrest, and asked Andre, are you okay? Didn't you miss your parents? Andrest, who was eating meat, looked up at Shiji with a puzzled expression. Mom and Dad? What it is? Do I have a parent? Children's memories are not very good. In the half year since Andrest came here, he had almost forgotten all about his parents. But soon, he seemed to remember something. There was a touch of excitement on Andrest's face. He waved his little hands and shouted, Mom, I want Mom. No more Dad, Shiji joked with a smile. Andrest was stunned again, and then he seemed to be unable to remember what his father looked like. He pursed his lips and muttered, Grandpa, there is a grandpa, don't Dad? Gee ha 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 ha, you are indeed my good grandson. Well, I don't want your heartless father anymore. Shiki laughed and said. Then he looked at Robin and the others and said, indeed, it's time to go back. Melview is not a place for young guys like you. Go to Avalon, that is the future, we will set off tomorrow. Admiral, are you going too? Robin asked with a smile. Of course, my grandson is going, and as a grandfather, I will definitely go too. Shiji said without hesitation. Lucci said very excitedly, according to the agreement, when I return, I will officially become a leader of the Warhammer Pirates. Speaking of this, Lucci glanced at Nightingale and the others fiercely, and said angrily, Humph, when I go back, I will file a complaint to Lord Orgrim and say that you misinterpreted his meaning. How dare you do this to me, the Chief Inspector? Nightingale and the other three didn't bother to compete with Lucci, a little guy. You can go ahead and file a complaint, but if Mr. Zui can support you, then we will lose. Alas, the little guy is still too young. I hope he can recognize Orgrim's true face soon in the future. At the same time, in the Red Earth continent, Marijo is underground. Fisher Tiger is hiding here with a tribe of giants at this time. This giant race is an important cadre of the Revolutionary Army, called Mori. There are rumors that Mori was also a prisoner of Impelton, the deep-sea prison, a long time ago. Later he actually ran away. If you really want to calculate it this way, then Shiji is not the first person to successfully escape from prison. But this is just a rumor after all, and I don't know whether it is true or not. Mori is a rare giant devil fruit user. His devil fruit ability can push the ground to form a strange space. In the original story, Fisher Tiger was so awesome that he climbed onto the Red Continent with his bare hands, sneaked into Marijoya, and started the slave liberation movement. This time, if there was no help from the Revolutionary Army, maybe Tiger would do it again. But now, with more convenient power, is he mentally ill? Do you have to go to the Red Continent? Follow Mori all the way and sneak into Marijoa. Mr. Tiger, do you really not need me to act together? Molly asked in a very gentle tone. This giant race seemed to have a feminine feel. Tiger didn't care about these problems on his body, but shook his head and said, you don't have to help me so much, Molly. I have already negotiated with Mr. Durag. He will help me enter Marijoya and then act as a support. I don't need to participate in these things. As for me, on the premise of rescuing the 3 Hancock sisters, I will find a way to liberate more slaves. These slaves may join your revolutionary army in the future. I see. Maury nodded, and then asked, then what are you going to do? Call. Tiger took a breath, as if calming down his nervousness. When Boss Orgrim came here, he was simple and crude and started a riot. But he can't, because his strength is not as ferocious as Boss Orgrim, and there is no way he can withstand Marijoa's counterattack. So he needed to be clever, first create chaos for Marijoa, and then take advantage of the opportunity to free the imprisoned slaves. These slaves will cause more disturbances. At that time, you should find a way to find the 3 Hancock sisters who are imprisoned in the residence of God and the celestial dragon. The two chatted about other topics and waited quietly for the passage of time. A few hours later, Tiger took out a pocket watch from his pocket, looked at the time, and said, "Okay, if you count the time, it's already dark now, so it's a good time to take action." "Okay, then I'll send you up," Maury nodded. Then he raised his hand and pushed lightly against the rock wall above his head. It was like soft mud, pushing the rock wall away. After a while, in a corner of Marijoya, on the ground, a strong man from the Fishmen tribe with red skin came out. It was dark at this time, but Marijoya was still brightly lit and bustling. "It's really a holy place where sins are covered up," Tiger murmured softly, with a hint of anger in his eyes. Afterwards, he and Maury agreed on a meeting place, and then the red figure quickly disappeared into the night. About 30 minutes later, a fire suddenly broke out in a residential area in Marijoya. The surrounding garrison troops quickly launched rescue operations. But for some reason, the fire was not controlled. After a while, multiple areas began to burn. "The wind seems a little noisy tonight." On a bell tower in Marijoya, Durag's figure slowly condensed out with the wind. Then he looked at the spreading fire, a smile hung on the corner of his mouth, and said, "Just let me help you give it a shot, Tiger." The moment he finished speaking, a strong wind suddenly blew up in Marijoya, and the fire that had been spreading suddenly swelled up. Not long after, it seemed that there was also a problem in the slave area, and a large number of slaves began to riot. A few years later, another slave riot broke out in Marijoya, and the piercing sirens resounded throughout the entire Holy Land. The abode of the gods, the slave detention place of the celestial dragons. At this time, a man with gray-green hair squatted in a dark corner with his hands leaning on ordinary shackles and an expressionless face. This man is none other than Gilder Tetsalo. At this time, he seems to have lost hope in life. Perhaps the reason that supports him to survive every day is Stella? That's right, I don't know if it's due to some influence or some changes in time, but Stella is not dead yet. "Eat, you damn slaves!" A servant of the celestial dragon opened Tezaro's cage, holding a few pieces of black bread in his hand, as hard as bricks, and threw them at Tezaro's feet. The bread fell to the ground and even smashed the ground. A small pit came out. Every time he ate something like this, Tetsalo felt like he was eating a stone. Fortunately, he could still soak it in water, otherwise if his teeth were knocked out, he might not be able to bite. Tetsalo he picked up the heavy, hard black bread, still without saying a word. That day, the dragon servant looked at Tezalo with a sneer, and said, "Your Stella, it is her turn to give Richard a meal today. Si Sheng has gone to bed." Tetsalo's originally expressionless expression changed slightly and appeared a little painful, but he still did not speak. After teasing Tezaro, the celestial dragon servant turned around and prepared to leave. However, at this moment, a piercing siren sounded. Tetsalo's eyes suddenly lit up, and he was afraid of evil. He didn't know what he was thinking. "I don't know why I have this urge." But at this moment, he instinctively hit the black bread as hard as a brick from behind and covered the head of the Tianlong servant. Boom, there was a muffled sound, and the servant didn't even have time to say anything. Blood splattered on his head, all red and white. Tetsalo, who was stained with blood, had a cruel look in his eyes, and whispered in a low voice, "Stella, I'm here to save you." After saying that, Tetsalo got the key to the shackles from the servant, untied his shackles, grabbed the saber on his body, and killed him. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 417. It's night, in the eternal night sea, where the Avalon Warhammer pirates are stationed. Beckman has just finished processing the last document in his hand, even though this is the sea of eternal night, and the sun will never rise. But there is still the concept of night. Now, according to the time, it is late at night. He picked up the coffee cup on the table and took a sip of coffee to refresh himself a little. Beckman looked at Avalon's quarterly report spread out on the table, feeling full of accomplishment. Every brick and every stone here, the changes here are all built step by the Warhammer pirates. But soon, a lonely look appeared on Beckman's face. Sphinx, Daipen, and Enelu all went to sea, and Mihawk and Barrett also led the First Legion of Avalon on an expedition. How many years has it been since I didn't gallop on the sea like them? I feel nostalgic for the days when I broke out from the North Sea with Orgrim and before I joined Boss Shaji's banner. Even when he was beaten by the Warring States and Zifa leaders on the Shampoo Islands, he looked like a miserable, bereaved dog. Ken, it was a passionate battle after all. Been taking care of things big and small within Avalon over the years. Beckman always felt that there was a fiery power in his heart that had nowhere to vent. He never gave up his efforts. No matter how busy he was, he would still find some time to hone his strength every day. But now, I feel that these powers are nowhere to be used. What trouble is this? After having power, status, and fame, but are you starting to look for excitement? Obviously, in the past, I hated unplanned things the most. Beckman smiled somewhat self-deprecatingly. After a moment of silence, Beckman whispered softly, "Maybe, it's time for me to take a walk on the sea. I haven't seen the scenery outside for a long time. But before that, I have to find someone to take over my job." If you think about it, Doflamingo is actually very suitable, but the problem is that this guy just left Avalon 2 days ago. It seems like a long time. He won't come back for a while. He's going to fight Dressrosa. And after all, Doflamingo is not a member of the Warhammer Pirates in name, so forget it. But if you want to find such a talent again, it's a little difficult to come out. There are many cotters in the Warhammer Pirates who can fight and kill, but there are not many who can coordinate the overall situation. It's impossible to count on that bastard Orgrim. As for Neiman, maybe it's time to train her properly. Beckman smacked his lips and thought. After drinking the coffee in one gulp, Beckman stretched out and prepared to rest. Yes, this so-called refreshing coffee actually had no effect on him at all. It was nothing more than a psychological comfort. That's all. At this moment, Beckman suddenly discovered that there seemed to be a little head outside the hall door looking in. "Raju," Beckman called with a smile. Sure enough, the little head shrank back first, and then walked in with some embarrassment. "Did I disturb you, Mr. Beckman?" Raju asked slightly uneasily. In the Germa Kingdom, although Geiji is still on Avalon Island, the rest of the war houses have returned to the North Sea. And the reason why Geiji stays here, not for anything else, but to ask for a ship ticket to Melview. He wanted to meet Nightingale, and then invited Nightingale to return to the North Sea with him. Give it a try. He could not save his wife Sola. Orgrim had agreed to his request, but because Nightingale was busy with Lucci, he had no time. At noon today, there was a message from Melview News came that Lucci's transformation has been successful and they will return to Avalon soon. After asking around, Geiji found out that Nightingale did not intend to come back, so he planned to leave in the next 2 days to go to May. Ervu has invited someone. No, I just finished my work. Beckman looked at the little girl with a smile. He still likes Reiju very much. Of course, don't get me wrong, it's not the kind of love between men and women. Although Beckman is a pirate, he is not evil yet. He has to attack a little girl. Just because of his ability, Beckman has been unconsciously controlling his power. This has good and bad qualities. The good thing is that Beckman is in this state all year round. Has extraordinary control over his devil fruit abilities. The downside is that he will continue to accumulate pressure. Sometimes, when he feels irritated, he will find a place where no one is around to vent and detoxify. Beauty. In the back mountains of Avalon, there is a forbidden land that is filled with poisonous gas and has even turned into a swamp. It was he who created it over the years. But the appearance of Reiju made Beckman very happy, because I found that I didn't need to control my poisonous power in front of this little girl. The poisonous gas brought up by breathing had no effect on her at all. In fact, this little girl also liked this kind of faint poisonous gas very much, as if it smells like perfume. Therefore, Beckman made a rare exception and gave Reiju, an outsider, the privilege so that she could come to him at any time. Even when he was dealing with official business. Although Orgrim he was a little surprised, but he also knew that there might be a risk of intelligence leakage, but in the end, nothing was done to stop him. After all, Beckman was his good brother. Over the years, he was the busiest and most tiring one. It doesn't matter if he is willful once. What? More, Germa didn't dare to mess with their Warhammer pirates. As for Gagi, he was extremely happy. Although it was clear that Beckman was not interested in his daughter, but, this is also a kind of progress. It is already very gratifying to be able to close the distance with the second in command of the Warhammer pirates. However, Reiju was very sensible and did not take advantage of this privilege to come to Beckman unscrupulously. She would always pick a time when Beckman was free and estimate the approximate time to come to him. In fact, Reiju is also very lonely. There are no normal people in the Germa kingdom. It seems that only in Avalon can she let her suppressed nature vent a little. After listening to Beckman's words, Reiju had a cute smile on her face and said, "That's good, I'm afraid it will disturb your work." Beckman stretched out his hand to rub Reiju's head and asked, "I told you that you don't have to do this anymore." After a while, the two sat on the sofa and started chatting. Beckman, who was originally going to rest, "I won't mention these things anymore." From time to time, their laughter can be heard in the hall, and it seems that Beckman is very relaxed. "Mr. Beckman, maybe I have to leave," Reiju said with some reluctance. Beckman smiled and said, "Are you going to Melview?" Reiju nodded, and then said, "My father said that I can choose to stay in Avalon, but..." Gagi felt that it would be okay, or even good, for Reiju to stay here. He could just go to Melview to hire someone, and Reiju would continue to be here, with Beckman taking care of her, so there would be no need to worry about anything. But Reiju also has worries in her heart. "But what?" Beckman asked softly. "My mother's body, if I stay here, I can't go back to Bihai. Although my father never talks about these things, I know very well that my mother..." Speaking of this, Reiju's expression looked a little sad. "There will be a time to meet again in the future. Reiju, leave with Gagi and your father. And you don't have to be so sad. That guy Nightingale is the best doctor in the world. With him here, your mother is going to be fine." Beckman said with a smile. "I thought you would be reluctant to leave me," Reiju said with a naughty smile. Little ghost head Beckman rubbed Reiju's head, and then said, "I will look forward to your coming again. Well, when my mother's illness is cured, I will come back to see you." Reiju nodded happily. At this moment, the door of the hall was pushed open again, and then Gangplank walked in with a very serious expression. First he saw Beckman, and then he saw Reiju. His face was a little surprised, but he was not curious about anything. He said directly, "Second master, something happened." "What happened?" Beckman raised his eyebrows and asked. "In this Warhammer Pirates, he and Gangplank are the busiest. Sometimes, when something happens late at night, they can't even think about resting. As for things on the world government side, a few hours ago, Mary Joa was burned, and a large-scale slave riot took place. According to the intelligence, it seems that Tiger did it." "I heard, was Mr. Hammer the one before? Did you recommend Tiger to Riley? Inside, do you have any arrangements for Mr. Chui? After all, this matter is not trivial. Although I am not sure, it seems that the god's abode of the celestial dragons has been breached. There was even a celestial dragon who was hacked to death on the bed by a rampaging slave. That look of death, Jill was chopped into pieces, she was miserable," Glank said quickly. Beckman was stunned at this time. Something would happen to Mary Joa, which was not beyond his expectation. After all, Orgrim did recommend Tiger to that guy Rayleigh. Go rescue those 3 slave girls. But what Beckman thought about before was just to make a small fuss, get someone and leave. How could he have thought that this matter would become such a big deal? Burning Mary Joa? Orgrim, originally you didn't even set fire to Mary Joa. And you killed a Draco in the chaos. But when he came to his senses, Beckman quickly said, "Don't think too much, that guy Orgrim did recommend it to Rayleigh. Tiger went to help, but he was not involved in this matter. It was too inconsistent. He had just reached an agreement with Wulaoxing not long ago. How could he break the agreement for no reason? What's more, this matter, we have no interest at all. But the relationship between Tiger and Lord Chui is not a secret. I'm afraid Wulaoxing will think too much about it," Gangplank said in a deep voice. Beckman touched his chin, and then said, "Not necessarily. The 5 old stars should be able to figure this kind of thing out. They also know Orgrim very well, and they know Orgrim very well. Mew can't afford to be early if he has no benefit. We have no benefit in it. This is the best proof. So don't we have to do something about this now?" Glank asked. Beckman thought for a while and then said, "Let's ask Orgrim first and see what that guy thinks." After finishing speaking, Beckman looked at Reiju apologetically. But before he could speak, Reiju said very sensibly, "Mr. Beckman, I'm a little sleepy and ready to go to bed." "Ha ha ha," Beckman smiled, nodded to her, and then the 3 of them left together. After Reiju returned to her residence halfway, Plank winked at Beckman with a stern look on his face and said, "Second master, what's going on? You can't be good at this, are you?" Beckman's face was expressionless. "Yijendeo, if you talk nonsense again, I will let you taste my venom." "Ha ha ha ha," Plank laughed, but didn't ask any more questions. At the same time, in Orgrim's bedroom. At this time, Orgrim was holding the sexy Queen Stussy in his arms, sleeping soundly. Stussy's head rested on Orgrim's arm, and half of her body was pressed against Orgrim's body. The quilt slipped slightly. In short, even in her sleep, this woman was still full of charm. Just as the 2 of them were immersed in sleep, suddenly, the phone on Orgrim's bedside table started ringing. The piercing scream suddenly woke Orgrim from his dream, and Queen Stussy also rubbed her eyes, looking very confused. Seeing Stussy's charming appearance with the quilt slipping off her body and the suspenders of her pajamas hanging on her arms, Orgrim couldn't help but swallowed and quickly covered her with the quilt again. "Don't be afraid, I'm just a phone bug," Orgrim said softly. After the words fell, he turned to look at the phone bug and murmured with a surprised expression, "Don't these 5 bad old men stay awake at night?" 5 old stars? Stussy also asked in surprise. "That's right, could it be that something happened to free fans?" Orgrim frowned and said, and then directly answered the phone. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 418. Orgrim was very impatient at being disturbed from his sweet dream. Even when facing Wulaoxing, he was not polite. "Hello? What are you doing? Late at night? Are you going to let people sleep? Don't you all go to work tomorrow? Will you pay me wages?" Orgrim answered the phone without saying a word. He came up with a set of soul questions. The 5 old stars who were still aggressive over there were confused. "What do you mean? I'm going to pay you. Are you really at work? If you, Khazgarot Orgrim, are willing to find a class and stop messing around in the sea, our world government is willing to allocate 10 billion belly every year to support you in your work. We've already thought of a name, so it's called Khazgarot Orgrim Serious Employment Subsidy Fund. We'll kill anyone who dares to stop him. You don't have to do anything, just go check in and drink tea every day, that's all. Just keep a happy mood and don't go out and kill people. It's more important than anything else. The most important thing in life is to be happy." But even though they are confused, the 5 old stars are still in their hearts because of this phone bug. Orgrim's very unhappy and impatient tone calmed him down a little. There is no doubt that Orgrim is sleeping. And the fact that he is sleeping at this point proves that he is not paying attention to Mary Joa. This riot? This means that it is very likely that Orgrim did not know that Mary Joa was burned by someone, and that a Draco was pinned to the bed and hacked to death by an unknown slave. Oh, he died miserably, and Gil is gone. All in all, it seems that Orgrim didn't know about this. That means that he should not be involved in this matter. In this case, the 5 old stars, they were much more relaxed. They were afraid that Orgrim was behind this matter, because they had already found out the identity of the leader, Fisher Tiger. The gangster leader of Fishman Island and the boss of Fishman Street. Mary Jo was also captured as a slave, and later ran away when Orgrim came to make trouble. It is said that from then on, there was a relationship between Fisher Tiger and Orgrim. Although a lot of intelligence later showed that Fisher Tiger had not defected to Orgrim, it seemed that the two parties were not very involved. Moreover, this guy had been engaged in some kind of slave liberation movement at sea, and even had some troubles. Doflamingo did it a few times, but it was only a small fuss. It was not as big as this time. Mary Joa was burned to death, and a celestial dragon was killed. So even if he was just, the 5 old stars were all frightened because they had anything to do with Orgrim. They were afraid that this was some kind of conspiracy created by Orgrim, so they burned Mary Joa with a feint to attract the attention of their world government. On the other hand, maybe the army has burst out from Fishman Island and is going to attack Marine Headquarters Marineford? Not to mention, now is really a great opportunity. Because most of the Navy headquarters power is scattered all over the world. Within a day, he went to protect the various royal clans who were about to come to Marijoya for a meeting. If Orgrim really did this and burned Marijoya first and then destroyed the Navy headquarters within one day, then his life is worth it. 100% must be passed down to future generations and become a historical figure. But now it seems that it is not Orgrim who is causing trouble, which really makes the 5 old stars feel a lot more relaxed. As for the World Conference, there is still such a thing as Nyangzipai. Marijoa was burned to pieces. Is this still okay? Should the 50 royal families from the participating countries be invited to bring their families to visit the site where Marijoa was burned? Before calling Orgrim, the 5 old stars had already contacted the Navy headquarters and urgently called off the World Conference. It's postponed for the time being. As for when it will be held again, well, let's wait until we fix Marijoa. To be honest, although there is the possibility of inferring Orgrim's crazy behavior just now, it has not been confirmed now. In addition, before the 5 old stars called the worm, they really didn't think about what benefits Orgrim could get from this. This was also the main reason why they relaxed as soon as they heard Orgrim's tone. Because they are not particularly convinced that Orgrim is causing trouble here. When Orgrim answered the phone, he was very impatient and started firing. After finishing his argument, he found that the 5 old stars fell silent and did not speak. This made Orgrim even more unhappy. You 5 bad old men have no one to sleep with at night. You envy me, right? Are you someone who makes phone calls late at night to disgust me? Do you really think I'm easy to bully? Do you want it to be so boring? We are all adults, and we are all top people who stomp their feet and make the sea tremble. Can we have some moral integrity? Can you breathe again? Do you want me to call a doctor for you? The electric bug comes to play with me late at night, right? Okay, I, Avalon, am not here day or night. If you like this kind of tune, I will play with you every day, Orgrim said angrily. The more rude he became, the more the 5 old stars wanted to laugh. But they didn't really laugh. If they laugh now, what will happen to Orgrim later? Talking about Mary Joa? We made it seem like we burned this place ourselves, and we were secretly having fun? Stussy sat next to Orgrim, listening to the phone bug with fear. Master, you are really my master. That's the 5 old stars opposite. I guess you are the only one in this world who dares to talk to them like this, right? Although Stussy is no longer in the world government, the pair of world governments over the years have been the strong impression of the 5 old stars was still very deep, and it still had such an impact on her. But today, Orgrim's manic momentum of grabbing the phone bug and spraying it indiscriminately, invisibly, made Stussy the last bit of psychological obsession with the world government was shattered. The more Stussy looked at Orgrim at this time, the more he found this man pleasing to the eye. He obviously spoke so rudely and had such a bad temper, but why did he let him people like it so much? The slightest trace of sleepiness had dissipated. Stussy reached out and patted Orgrim's chest gently, and said, Master Hammer, don't be so angry. Those 5 people called so late Chong, something must have happened. Please understand. With that said, Stussy got up from the bed again and went to pour water for Orgrim with a smile. Mr. Hammer? Orgrim was stunned for a moment. Since Stussy blew herself up last time, he hadn't heard her call him that for a long time. This cry made Orgrim feel itchy in his heart. The anger of getting up after being harassed by Woolaoxing also dissipated a lot. He smiled and said to Stussy, don't catch a cold. The Woolaoxing side naturally understood that the female voice just now should be the traitor Stussy. Well. At least you know how to say a few kind words for us. Our world government did not support you in vain in the past few years. Huh? It's not right? Why are our psychological expectations so low? Facing a traitor like Stussy, shouldn't we hate her to the core? Why are you still happy? Sure enough, anything can change if it gets involved with that bastard Orgrim. Ahem, Orgrim. Woolaoxing paused for a moment and called out in a serious tone. Orgrim was still a little impatient and said, here, I can't let go for a long time, cough cough, I can't breathe. I originally wanted to scold them, but after thinking about it I decided not to. After all, he was the boss. Anyway, he took it easy and saved some face for them. Naturally, the 5 old stars also heard what Orgrim's original unfinished words were. Fortunately, Orgrim stopped the conversation in time and did not make the 2 parties really embarrassed. What happened? Orgrim asked. You don't know yet? Isn't your intelligence about the Warhammer pirates very powerful now? The strongest in the industry who claims to be able to crush the big mom pirates, the 5 old stars joked. I really don't know how these 5 old guys are so smart. Their homes were burned down, and they still have the thought to tease Orgrim? Orgrim frowned slightly. He frowned and asked, stop talking such nonsense. Could it be that something went wrong with Freofin's business? Let me tell you, I, Orgrim, saw that your world government was in charge and had strong confidence in you, so I invested 250 billion belly in it. If something goes wrong with this wave, I will really go crazy. When the time comes, what means will I use to stop the loss? That will scare me myself. If he really lost 2.5 trillion belly, Orgrim would go back to 10 years ago, and he would really go crazy. The 5 old stars felt very complicated when they heard this. You pirate, you trust our world government so much, I really don't know what to say. Alas, the world is so cold. Ahem, don't worry, it's not Fravanza's business. Fravan's business is going very smoothly. Don't think we don't know that all your 2,500 billion belly have been spent, right? We here are all keeping an eye on the market, Wulaoxing said softly. I also know that you bought nearly 3 times the amount of goods I did, so 10 trillion belly is about the same, right? Since it's not these things, why are you looking for me at night? Do we cooperate on the rest? Dress Rosa. That's not my business, it's Doflamingo's business. If you want to talk about it, go talk to him. Isn't he now the king of the Shishibukai? You don't need me to give you my contact information, Orgrim said carelessly, directly telling all about Doflamingo. But this is because he knows that these are trivial matters that the 5 old stars will not care about. The 5 old stars are indeed also at this time. It's very strange. Dress Rosa. Doflamingo. What is that guy going to do? But it's true that they have no intention of taking any more care. Dress Rosa's world influence is now at the bottom. Big shit. They, the 5 old stars, are too lazy to worry about it. Since this bastard Orgrim dares to talk about it here, it means that he is not afraid of avoiding taboos on this matter, so it should be nothing. Someone is causing trouble in Marijoya, that Fisher tiger. He set fire to Marijoya and freed a large number of slaves. Although now I don't think you are the one behind it, but Orgrim, give us a word. Bar, the 5 old stars spoke in a deep voice. Orgrim became excited immediately. Well, if you guys talk about this, then I won't be sleepy anymore. With an undisguised sense of schadenfreude in his tone, Orgrim asked directly, wait, tell me in detail, let me make sure there is no trick on my part behind this. Am I so detailed? Is there a trick on your part? Don't you have any clues in mind? I think you bastard, are just watching the fun and don't think it's a big deal, right? The 5 old stars cursed in their hearts. At this moment, the 5 old stars have been completely sure that there should really be no tricks from the bastard Orgrim. Therefore, the 5 old stars are too lazy to confirm this. After that, he asked directly, this matter will definitely not be forgotten like this. After this, our world government will make every effort to arrest that damn Fisher tiger. Do you want to? What kind of protection would be provided to him? Seeing that the 5 old stars were unwilling to say more, Orgrim felt a little regretful. It's really sad that he couldn't get any thoughts from the people involved in such a fun thing. Alas, how did you say that? Human beings' happiness is always based on the pain of others. But some people are selfish. Anyway, you 5 old stars have already begun to suffer. Why not hold the idea of helping the world and let us be happy? Harm others but not yourself, bah. As for Fisher Tiger's problem, Orgrim has no intention of protecting him. First of all, he and Tiger are just acquaintances. Although he appreciates Tiger's great personality, the two of them are not on the same page at all. People. Secondly, although he recommended Tiger to Raleigh, he was just a middleman and never asked Tiger to help Raleigh. Even if he wanted to help, it was Raleigh who made the offer and asked Tiger to take action. There is a relationship of interest here. There is no interest entanglement with Orgrim, so there is no other cause and effect. Therefore, there is no need for Orgrim to shoulder the pressure of the world government for Tiger. We are not children anymore. Tiger's ability to choose to do such a thing means that he has figured out the consequences. What exactly Raleigh used to convince him is the matter between the two of them. If they have to bear it, it is Raleigh who will bear it. Of course. Orgrim will not betray Tiger, although he will not help him carry it, but if there is something he can help with, and make it easier for him, use a back door or something, then there is no problem at all. Don't worry, you can do whatever you like. This matter has nothing to do with my Warhammer pirates. Just don't blame it on me. But let me make it clear to you first. Fisher Tiger is here. The Murloc race has an extraordinary reputation. If he really raises the banner to cause trouble after this, I don't rule out the possibility that the Murlocs in Avalon will join him. I have to be mentally prepared for this. If you have it, I won't stop it, because I don't owe you anything, and I'm not your subordinate, do you understand? Orgrim said with a somewhat arrogant tone. The 5 old stars didn't care about Orgrim's arrogance. As for the problems he mentioned, they were not problems. The two sides casually talked a few words and hung up on each other. Phone bug. Please give me flowers and monthly passes, guys. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 419. Orgrim still had a smile on his face after hanging up the phone. Was Marie-Jo really burned? That guy Tiger is really talented. I wonder if the 3 Hancock sisters were rescued. Is the future Golden Emperor Teezero in there? But he didn't ask any of these questions because he was just curious and had little to do with him. The reason why I feel so happy now is just to take pleasure in my misfortune. Even though his relationship with the world government has now eased, he seems to be a bit complicit. But each side hates the other's misfortune. What if something big happened to the Warhammer pirates today, such as Orgrim accidentally tripping while walking, falling into the sea and drowning? Then you can watch it. Bastards like the 5 old stars, they would probably be happy to organize some kind of festival, and everyone would celebrate it, and everyone would have to eat 2 bowls of rice for dinner at night. Just as Orgrim was gloating about his misfortune, Stussy walked over wearing a lace suspender pajamas with a sexy aura. In her hand, she was holding a cup of hot tea. Come, Orgrim, have some tea. Stussy walked up to Orgrim and said with a smile. Orgrim muttered with some dissatisfaction, you women are really unreliable. A few minutes ago, you were calling Lord Hammer. In the time it takes to make tea, am I Orgrim again? Stussy looked at Orgrim's pretentious posture with some amusement, then reached out and scratched Orgrim's nose, and called out in a sweet tone, Master Hammer. Orgrim only then did Mew put a smile on his face again. Stussy no longer spoiled him and said with a smile, okay, let me give you something sweet to taste. I didn't just give it to you in front of those 5 people just to save face. What happened? Orgrim said with a smile, of course something big happened. Didn't I introduce Tiger to Rayleigh before? The result was good. That guy Tiger was really smart. He rushed to Marie-Jo and set a fire, freeing a large number of slaves there. The 5 old stars were afraid that I was involved in this matter, so they quickly came to ask. Stussy was shocked. Is there such a good thing? Gee, ha 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 ha, but even though I got involved a little bit, I just pointed the way. There is really no conspiracy on my part here, and the same goes for Rayleigh and Tiger. For such a big thing, they didn't know to tell me in advance. Once you talk about it, let me be mentally prepared, Orgrim joked with a smile. What to prepare? Are you going to order melon seeds and drinks, move a small bench, and go to the theater at Marie-Jo? Stussy asked with a smile. Orgrim shook his head with some regret and said, yes, even though I won't participate in anything, I didn't even go to the scene to watch the burning of Mary Georgia. It's such a pity, I don't know if there will be such a beautiful scenery again in the future. That's okay. If you really go to Marie-Jo, you'll have to take Tiger's blame. Stussy said a little funny. On the contrary, if I were really caught by those 5 old men, I wouldn't be able to explain it even if I was justified. Orgrim smacked his lips and said. Then, he seemed to have thought of something again, and said very dissatisfied, "Where is that guy Gangplank? Didn't he come to inform me about such a big thing? Do you still need Wulaoxing to call me and notify me? Am I the king of world government or the king of Avalon?" Stussy looked at the pretentious Orgrim with disdain. "You are so loud. Are the 5 old stars here to inform you? Can you please give me a little face?" But before Stussy could say anything, it was outside the house. There was a rapid knock on the door and Beckman's call. "Look, as soon as you say it, they come," Stussy said with a smile. "Humph, they are not as sensible and neat as the 5 old stars. Alas, I can't count on them in the future." "The world government is still reliable," Orgrim said pretentiously. Stacy almost laughed out loud. But she no longer paid attention to the pretentious Orgrim. Unlike the pink furry pajamas, this one could only be seen by Orgrim. She did not avoid Orgrim, she sat directly on the bed, turned her back to Orgrim, unbuttoned her clothes, exposed her smooth back, and prepared to change into a coat. And Orgrim shouted cursingly, I heard it, stop knocking, why are you knocking on the door here in the middle of the night?" He didn't have the scruples like Stussy, so he just put on a pair of trousers and stood up. After closing the bedroom door, he walked outside and opened the door for Beckman and the others. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Beckman and Plank both there, looking very serious. "Orgrim, something big happened," Mary Joas sighed. Beckman didn't have any polite words and just jumped into the topic. I know, Mary Joa was burned by that guy Tiger." Orgrim waved his hand and stopped Beckman from speaking. You know? How did you know? Could it be that you really arranged it behind the scenes?" Beckman asked with a surprised look on his face. "There's something wrong with me. By doing such a thankless job, I've only managed to ease the relationship with the world government, but then I'm going to shit on their heads?" Orgrim smiled and said, and then explained, "I'm counting on you too. The daylily is cold. My younger brother Wu Laoxing reported the situation to me immediately and listened to me instructions and arrangements." Only then did Beckman understand, but his expression was very sad. It was like the feeling that you clearly know that Orgrim is showing off, but you can't do anything about him. Yes, it was the 5 old stars who told him about this first, and he was not at the scene, so wouldn't Orgrim be able to brag about it anyway? At this moment, Gangplank said, "Master Hammer, a celestial dragon died in this commotion. He died miserably. Do you also know that Gil was chopped into pieces?" Grim was stunned for a moment. "What? And a celestial dragon died? This didn't happen in the original story. Has Jill been chopped off? How much hatred is this? Nice chop. Old guys like Wulaoxing, why didn't you explain it clearly to me just now? But if you think about it carefully, if a Draco died, would he tell you about Orgrim specifically to make you happier? It is even estimated that this matter will not be reported to the press, and it will definitely be handled secretly. Otherwise, the celestial dragons would be killed by slaves, which would be an insult to the legal rationality of the entire world government. It will affect the majesty of the Tianlong people and even cause more vicious incidents." But soon, Orgrim reacted again and couldn't help but praise, "Okay, Plank, your intelligence work. If you can find out that Marijoa died as a celestial dragon, that would be very powerful. You even investigated the details of her death? This is even more powerful." Plank responded with a smile, "Otherwise, wouldn't all my years of work have been in vain? And it's not necessarily true. This is just an unconfirmed rumor. There is no need to confirm it, it has nothing to do with us, and the world government will never admit it even to death." Orgrim waved his hand and said, "There is no need to spend energy to confirm whether any Dracos have been stamped on Gil. If you have this time, why don't you do something else? Can't you stop being so boring?" At this moment, Queen Stussy also packed up and walked out of the bedroom. Even this woman who loves stinky beauty even put on light makeup on herself. She nodded to Beckman and Planck, who both nodded back. Then Stussy skillfully took out Beckman's favorite tea from the tea cabinet and went to brew it. Sitting on the sofa, Beckman picked up the tea and said with some embarrassment, "It's so late, why bother bothering my sister-in-law?" But before he finished speaking, Stussy said with a smile, "We are all a family and we have business to do. It's not a bother. Don't say that again in the future." Orgrim also felt very comfortable after hearing this. Stussy is a really great woman. Not only is she beautiful, but she also has a good figure. Even if he is released, he is a very capable person, otherwise he would not be able to bring such a big business to Happy Street. But now, she just wants to stay with Orgrim and be his little woman quietly. But at such a time, she was able to show the magnanimity of a lady, the mistress of the Warhammer pirates. With her at home, I do feel that everything is much more meticulous. Beckman stopped being polite and chatted with Stussy with a smile. The two of them sat down together and chatted casually. Then Beckman asked Orgrim, "What did you tell the 5 old stars? This guy Tiger has a great influence on the fishmen, and I'm afraid of what he's going to do next." "Well, I have also considered these things and have made it clear to Wulaoxing. Don't worry." Orgrim nodded and said, "That's good." Beckman then said, picking up the teacup and taking another sip. Gangplank thought for a moment and asked, "Master Hammer, if this really happens, how should we arrange it? Do you want to stop it? If Tiger really shakes people on the sea, it will definitely affect Avalon. There should be many elite fishmen who will seek refuge with him. After all, Tiger's identity as the leader is not a decoration. The fishmen, it seems, there is a lot of loyalty, especially for people like them who come from the same street. If it is really for the benefit of the Warhammer pirates, Orgrim should block the news now and strictly ban the elite Murlocs of the 1st Legion of Avalon. Go and seek refuge with Tiger." But Orgrim fell silent. He looked at Beckman. Beckman seemed to be thinking about this matter, but he didn't give the correct suggestion immediately, which shows that he, like himself, he was also weighing things up. After a long time, Orgrim stopped waiting for Beckman to speak and sighed, "Sometimes, there are some things that we don't do, but don't hold others back. Tiger liberated slaves of all races indiscriminately, and even risked going to Marijoa to do so." Although Orgrim could not learn this fearless and selfless spirit, he still admired him very much. At the same time, due to Neiman's early years, the reason is that the 3 Orgrim brothers and sisters were very dissatisfied with those slave merchants and slave-catching teams. But the butt determines the head, and the 3 Orgrim brothers have now become superiors, saying, to put it bluntly, Avalon has also received bonuses because of this matter. Many talents were introduced by slaves. Therefore, Orgrim never said anything when Doflamingo did this. Yes, that's right. Orgrim is so hypocritical. He is willing to admit that he is a pirate. He is evil and hypocritical. What's wrong? But hypocrisy is hypocrisy. Just don't talk in silence and get some benefits secretly. Now, someone stands up and is willing to, if you do something that bastards like Orgrim don't do, even if you don't support it, you shouldn't hold back. Perhaps this is Orgrim's final hypocrisy as a pirate? Beckman glanced at Orgrim. Grim then said, "Well, I think so too. Planck, tomorrow you give a message to all the cotters and the officers of the First Army, and tell them that if Tiger really needs to set up a flag, our Warhammer pirates have acquiesced in this matter. If anyone wants to leave, don't mind, we will happily send them away. After all, this is not about surrendering to the enemy, it's just that everyone has his own ambitions." Gangplank looked at Beckman and Orgrim silently, then smiled and said, "I have to say, Mr. Hammer and Mr. ER, you two are very generous in your work. If it were me, you wouldn't be so good. I've measured it, okay, I understand what to do. Tiger's fire will definitely have a big impact this year after it is set off. Even now, I still can't see clearly. Where is the impact? Orgrim smacked his lips and said. Apart from anything else, the World Conference that is about to be held will definitely not be held. This is the first big impact. I wonder if Durag and the Revolutionary Army will laugh out loud because of this matter? Beckman said with a smile. Gee ha 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 ha, that's true. Orgrim also laughed. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 420. As an organized and premeditated attack, Tiger actually rescued the three Hancock sisters after Mary Joa was burned. The world government, on the other hand, failed to catch him as a fishman in the first place, and it would be even harder to catch him if he was placed in the sea. Therefore, about a week has passed since the incident of burning Marijoa, but it still has not come to an end. The Navy, who were originally scattered in various places to protect the royal family, had to send back the half-departed royal family with great difficulty. Then they all started towards Marineford. For Orgrim and others who are outside the world government system, it is really not a big deal to watch the excitement. But for people in various sectors within the world government system, this is the prelude to a political storm. Marijoa was burned to pieces, shouldn't someone take the blame? And for such a big thing, a big shot will definitely take the blame. And he must die miserably. Sure enough, within a week, 17 or 8 senior officials of the world government directly stepped down from the headquarters in Marijoa. The biggest among them is the chief executive of the world government, who is considered to be on the same level as the commander-in-chief of the entire army. He is the kind of person who can sit down and talk to the 5 old stars before. Even such big guys immediately left get out of class. Fortunately, he was not the one who took the blame. He just resigned and was not killed. The real storm seemed to hit the CP agency directly in the face. The current commander-in-chief of the army came from the CP organization. Over the years, his performance has been so-so, and he cannot be said to have achieved any success. But he is indeed an obedient guy, which is why the 5 old stars were able to let him sit in this position. However, in the past few years, Wulaoxing has intentionally changed the commander-in-chief of the entire army, and has relied more on the Navy instead of the CP agency. The Naval Marshal Cyborg had already been appointed to be the commander-in-chief of the entire army. It's just that there has never been a suitable time, but this time, the words are sent to the Navy. Where is Marijoa? It is not under the control of the Navy headquarters at all. It is the headquarters of the CP organization. Now the headquarters of your CP organization, the headquarters of the world government, has been burned to the ground. Can your CP agency come out and be beaten? Sure enough, on the 8th day, big news broke from the world government. The commander-in-chief of the entire army resigned and committed suicide out of fear of guilt. Of course, it's hard to say whether this is suicide or not. Anyway, this is the definition given by the world government. And he took the blame reasonably. The commander-in-chief of the army had the duty to protect Marijoa, but Marijoa was burned by Tiger, and he was the one who failed in his duty. That must be guilty, not to mention that many people don't know that a celestial dragon died here. This is even more of a serious crime and dereliction of duty, because your CP agency has the duty to protect the Tianlong people. So it was a fitting death. No problem at all. But now, the commander-in-chief of the entire army has died, and this position is effectively vacant. A huge political storm naturally emerged. The Navy is all working hard. Crazy began to attack the various inactions of the CP agency. At the same time, on the sea, began to search for all the whereabouts of Fisher Tiger. Of course, the CP agency would not sit still and wait for death, but it didn't take long before it was hammered to the point where it was unable to fight back. Because the Navy found a very important piece of information and evidence. Fisher Tiger, not acting alone, Marijoa arson, yes, the world once again ignored the slave emancipation movement, labeling it an act of arson. The Marijoya arson case was not just the plan of Tiger alone, but also had the shadow of the Revolutionary Army behind it. Most of the slaves who escaped from Marijani were picked up by the Revolutionary Army, some were sent back to their hometowns, and some even turned around and joined the Revolutionary Army directly. This kind of thing cannot be hidden. The Navy discovered the sign immediately. All of a sudden, the CP organization, which was already in danger, became even more vulnerable. Because the current division of responsibilities between the Navy headquarters and the CP agencies is very clear. The Navy deals with pirates at sea, while the CP agencies deal with the Revolutionary Army. Now, the target of your severe attack has hit your house and set a fire in your house. It's up to you to see if you die. After Wu Laoxing got the news, he was furious, and the CP agency was cleaned again. In the past few years, this is not the first time that the CP agency has disappointed Wu Laoxing. We agreed to place an eye next to that bastard Orgrim, but turned around and was put to sleep by Orgrim. As a result, our Lord Yim's void throne was moved away by him. Time. Forget it, now the Revolutionary Army has set fire to Marijoa, and you haven't even caught a hair. The World Conference has been cancelled because of this, and the majesty of the world government has been severely dealt a blow. If we don't deal with you trash, who will? Admiralty Marineford. In Marshal Cyborg's office, the Warring States General, Zifa and Ahe were all present. As for Garp, he ran far away and hasn't come back yet. Although Marijoa was burned, it seemed that the big guys in the Navy were in a happy mood and were not angry at all. But thinking about it carefully, it seems that they really have nothing to be angry about, and it's not like they burned down their naval headquarters, Marineford. Although the world government is the superior government, in fact, the administrative system and the military system are completely separate. Marijo, it has nothing to do with them. The CP agency is also suffering the losses. Why are they so sad? Especially now, the arch-rival CP organization is in trouble, the commander-in-chief of the entire army has been killed, and the position has been vacated. Within the world government, the heyday of the Navy is coming soon. Because Marshal Cyborg's promotion to commander-in-chief is almost certain, and there is no way that some monster from the CP agency will pop up now and steal this position. A big boss from the Navy faction is in the position of commander-in-chief of the entire army. If he doesn't favor the Navy, who should he favor? And those 5 people do mean to rely more on the Navy. Doesn't this mean that the Navy is about to take off? At the same time, if Marshal Cyborg is promoted to commander-in-chief of the entire army, it will affect the whole body. It will be an opportunity for all the big guys in the Navy. There is almost no suspense for Sakaski, Kyuzan, and others, and they will soon take the position of general. The same goes for him during the Warring States period. A daughter-in-law who has been married for many years will inevitably be promoted to a naval marshal. Ha ha ha, have you heard of it? That Mia guy was retired. Zifa said while drinking tea with a smile. Mia, this feminine name, represents the highest power controller before the CP agency, which is the same level as the Marshal of the Navy. But obviously, this time he also came out to take the blame and was immediately retired. Okay, for such a big thing, he is lucky to be able to retire alive and be transferred to do logistics work. Look at the arrogant commander-in-chief before, that's really miserable. The Warring States General smiled and said. I really didn't expect that. I thought that Fisher Tiger should be related to the Warhammer pirates and that bastard Orgrim. I didn't expect that the person standing behind him in the end turned out to be the Revolutionary Army, Ahe also said a little funny. That's right, the Navy was also suspicious of Orgrim at the beginning, just like the 5 old stars. As a result of the investigation, traces of the Revolutionary Army were found. Durag of the Revolutionary Army was also not afraid of being bitten by lice because of his debts. Within a few days, he directly issued a statement in the News of the World, claiming that the Revolutionary Army would be responsible for this incident. That's right, it was me, Dalag, who did it. How about it? Bite me? Not to mention, his appearance really took most of the pressure and attention away from Tiger. Now, most people believe that Tiger is the executor and the planner is the Revolutionary Army. As for why the Revolutionary Army did this. First, there is no doubt that they are already at odds with the world government. Second, most of the slaves they liberate will join the Revolutionary Army, which can directly expand their scale, which is good for them. Third, prestige. After this wave, slaves all over the world will naturally have a good impression of the Revolutionary Army. If someone really escapes in the future, they may choose to join the Revolutionary Army if they have nowhere to go. Fourth, the World Conference was cancelled as a result. The two world conferences focused on how to deal with the Revolutionary Army, an evil chaotic party organization. The Revolutionary Army is counter-attacking now. Don't you like to hold meetings to study how to torment our Revolutionary Army? Okay, our Revolutionary Army will just burn down your venue. Meeting. Fuck your grandma. After this wave, interests, reputation, and plans were all realized. Even if Darag doesn't say he's responsible for this, the world government will probably put the blame on their Revolutionary Army, and they won't be able to shake it off. It was precisely because Darag and Tiger attracted almost everyone's attention. Therefore, Rayleigh, the old Yinbai, did not reveal his existence at all, and was still happily working as his own co-editor on the Chambord Islands, feeling very pleased with himself. Even as long as Orgrim and others don't betray him, it is estimated that in this life, he will not be found out about these dirty facts. Yes, I originally thought it was Orgrim, but I didn't expect it to be Darag. However, due to a strange combination of circumstances, Darag has been a great help to our Navy headquarters, the Warring States General said with some emotion. Do you think it was really just a coincidence that Darag did this kind of thing at this time? Could it be that he really wants to help our Navy? Zifa frowned slightly and asked. But before the others could think about it, Marshal Cyborg cleared his throat and said ahem, don't say such nonsense again. Let's discuss it again. What does it mean to help our naval headquarters? What did you help us with? Burned Marijoa. The Warring States General and others all laughed, because Marshal Cyborg's expression was not very serious. Got it, let's just talk about it behind closed doors among ourselves. Zifa agreed with a smile. Well, in short, just wait. Soon, when this political storm has passed, the changes that should happen will happen. But before that, our Navy headquarters must also do what it needs to do. The CP agency is lessons learned from the past, the world government does not need waste. In short, although the Revolutionary Army claimed to be responsible for this, it seems that Fisher Tiger did not really join the Revolutionary Army. The two parties may only have a cooperative relationship, and the Revolutionary Army is not within our scope of responsibility. But that Tiger is here, try to catch him, Marshal Cyborg said here. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. His voice paused for a moment, and then he responded, come in. A naval colonel walked in, holding an intelligence report in his hand. Report to the Marshal, the latest information, one of the masterminds of the Marijoa arson case. Fisher Tiger took some slaves on the sea and established the Sun Pirates. Pirates? The Warring States General was stunned for a moment, then smacked his lips and said, it seems that he really has no intention of joining the Revolutionary Army. Is he planning to go it alone? This time, our Navy can't let him go even more. The Warring States period, Marshal Cyborg looked at Warring States Road. Exist, Warring States responded quickly. I'll leave this matter to you and strive to capture Fisher Tiger and bring him to justice as soon as possible, Marshal Cyborg ordered directly. Marshal Cyborg didn't finish his words, insisting that Warring States should catch people quickly or something. After all, that guy Tiger is a fishman. If he just jumps into the sea, you can go find him. But this matter is a bonus. If the Navy can do it beautifully, it will beat the CP agency to death, and beat them until they are speechless. Got it, Marshal? The Warring States General nodded directly and responded.